Alright, I think we're ready to get started. Good morning, everybody. It's noon o'clock. It's noon where I'm at now. It's noon o'clock. Hello, home, Dan, Nundubs. It's good to see people. I'm just giving people another minute or so to show up. Don Bluth was an animator on Sleeping Beauty. In fact, it says here in his book he talks about it. I've skimmed through it a little bit already. I know I watched a documentary on Sleeping Beauty. He worked on the scene with the two kings. Like, that was his first scene ever. That was actually his first movie ever he worked on, officially. He worked on the scene with the two kings. He was like a in-between animator with John Lansbury on that scene. Oh, I did something with the camera. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Alright. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, for those that don't know, Don Bluth actually released an autobiography, Somewhere Out There, My Animated Life, where he talks about his experiences being an animator and a filmmaker and such. It's a pretty long book. It's actually longer than I thought it was going to be. It's like a good, it's well over 300 pages. Yeah, it's well over 300 pages, for sure. And I thought it'd be really fun to sit here and read it for you guys, because it'd be fun. Because I actually want to sit down and read it myself, but I know I don't have the time to actually just sit down and read in my spare time, because being a YouTuber, I don't have spare time nowadays. First thing I want to comment is that I don't know who did the drawings on the title of the book here. They are ugly. They are ugly. I'm sorry. These are. I mean, look at Anastasia here. Just Jesus Christ, what do they do? Littlefoot, Dirk, like they just look so bad. Like I hope Don didn't do these. I hope Don didn't do these, because my goodness, that would have been really, really bad. I don't know who the hell did that. You should read in different voices like Bob Show. I don't want to do that. I don't want to just do what Bob Show does. I kind of just want to sit here and read the book personally. That's just what I want to do. So yeah, if you pay me money, I might consider it though. Alright, let's go ahead and get started reading. Alright, let's begin. For the wonderful moments of my life, I give credit to my parents. They were the best loving influence a guy could ever hope for, and I dedicate this book to them. To Dad, Virgil Ronell Bluth, I might have read that wrong, the policeman, who labored so diligently to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads, and to Mom, Emmeline Pratt Bluth, bless her heart, who never ceased smiling through stormy clouds and fanning the flames of creativity. Thank you both for the joy in my life. God bless. Right. Prologue. In a kingdom far away, beyond the sun, the moon, and the stars, there lives a king. Some call him the great creator, while others just say God. On this special occasion, the heavenly cost of cherubim, seraphim, and a multitude of angels have gathered in a grand starry room, waiting for the king. They will bid farewell to one of their own, a cherub with alabaster skin and curly blonde hair, and wearing a robe that is not quite clean. An anxious expression dominates the lad's face as he waits for the arrival of the king and the gift that he will be given to see him through his mortal journey. As the king enters the room, a hush falls over the crowd in anticipation of what he will say. Suddenly, like heavenly music, his voice rings throughout paradise. I might skip this part, to be honest, it's one more page. Yeah, so for those who have no idea, Don was actually a very Christian man. Like, he's very into his faith and stuff, which is fine. Like, he's free to be religious if he wants to be. So he's definitely gonna talk a lot about that in this book, I'm sure. So there's that. Hello, Brandon. Good to see you. Come here, cherub, he begins. The king places his hand on the boy's forehead. My son, the earth is beautiful and life will be good to you. With your gift, you will be a dreamer, and many will hear your words and be inspired to find their own dreams. While you are mortal, you will forget about us. However, as the years pass, you will begin to remember. The great king embraces the boy and whispers something in his ear. The cherub says, I will, father. I promise. The king continues, I will also give you one weakness, my son, so you will stay humble, and I will give you guardians to protect you while you get in trouble. The cherub manages a smile, ever so small, and bids his friends farewell. 9 months later, on September 13th, 1937, the cherub was born into the mortal world in a place called El Paso, Texas. His parents named him Donald. The innocent cherub was set on a path of self-discovery. He remembered everything said by the great king and the wonderful gift he had been given. But he couldn't tell anyone on Earth about it, because he hadn't even yet learned how to talk. Alright, so that's the little prologue there. So that's him just describing how he was born. You go next stage. The physical set of how he was born. No, I'm kidding. Could you imagine? Hello, Chaos. Thanks for the shot glass, I guess. Thanks. Alright. Chapter 1. Alright, actually, this is Act 1. There's multiple acts in this book. So the first act is the stage is set with a little butterfly horse there. So yeah, it's a novel, obviously, but there are little drawings here and there in the book that I'll show you guys if you can see them. Like, yeah, right there. It looks like an early draft of the small one right there. Could be. Or it could just be him and a horse. Who knows? Chapter 1. A Humble Beginning. My birth certificate is printed with small black letters. It reads, Donald Virgil Bluth, September 13th, 1937, El Paso, Texas, USA. The date, city, state, and country are correct. But I've always felt that the name was too long. Just call me Don. It's simple and easy to remember. Being born in Texas is a matter of pride for Texans. I'm not sure why, but a lot of us boast about it in universities and on playing fields. I've been to Texas. I know that's damn true. They say I'm from the biggest state in the Union. That's a fact, partner, and don't you forget it. Well, once Alaska joined the Union, it bumped Texas to second place. Yeah, Alaska became a state in the 50s, so yeah, Don for a while was in the biggest state of the United States, technically. That must have been fun. But we Texans will once Alaska joined the Union, it bumped Texas to second place, but we Texans will never cave into the fact. Besides, Alaska is cold and our climate is perfect in every way. As pleased as I am about my birthplace, the year of my birth is more significant to me, because just 99 days after I was born, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt Disney's first feature animated film, premiered at the Carthway Circle Theater on December 21st, 1937. That animated film had a great influence over the chapters of my life and my personal path to self-discovery. I'll tell you more about that later. Life was good on Oxon Street in El Paso. At home, Mom was usually found humming at her singer sewing machine. Sorry, the word singer threw me off. Wait, she's singing and sewing? But no. I don't know. Sewing women's bras and romantic gowns for clients that were inspired by the visions that they had seen in the movies. Pop was a cop who always slept with a gun under his pillow. I was never allowed to touch it. He said it was there to protect us, just in case one of the criminals he put behind bars got out and came looking for him and his family to settle a score. Pop patrolled the Texas border between El Paso and Juarez. I guess that's the word. I think it's Juarez. I could be reading that wrong, though. Where at the time, there was so much action. It felt like a war zone of highly sophisticated criminal activity, drugs, robbery, prostitution, and especially murders. The gangsters and cartels were out there in force, raising hell, armed to the teeth with knives and guns, making a living as best they could, and ready to do away with anyone who might get in their way. Pop, like a well-trained sheepdog that scared off wolves, kept the criminals away from our part of Texas. But he was no ordinary policeman, no sir. He was special, like Dick Tracy, the detective who always put his finger on the identity of the killer. That's what Pop said. He went for the killers, gathering evidence for the district attorney. Eventually, my parents decided it was time to move away from the border to find a more peaceful, safer place to raise their family. The best Don Bluth character? Spike. Not even a question. God sent me here. If Dad protected us from what lie outside our home. There are these little subsections here in the book that's like have their own little things. They're not chapters, but like they have their own little titles there, so just thought I'd share that. God sent me here. If Dad protected us from what lay outside our home, Mom kept harmony from within. She made sure that she and Dad, my older brother Bob, and I knelt down together each night before dinner, with Dad leading us in prayer. Sometimes we went to church, but not every Sunday, because Mom and Dad were always working, or it seemed that way to me. In Sunday school, I learned stories and songs that kept my tiny, warm feeling of anticipation burning bright. There was something fabulous in my future, even if I didn't know what it would be. I am a child of God, and He has sent me here. He's given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear. Isn't that a sweet song? It says so much about what children need to feel welcome on earth. I first heard it at Sunday school in El Paso's Congregation of Church of Jesus Christ on Latter-day Saints. I teach it to the children in my Sunday school in Scottsdale to this day. When I was 6, my parents called Bob and me into the living room. We found Pop and Mom, then pregnant with my brother Fred. Yeah, he was not an only child. He had multiple siblings. I believe one of his siblings ran for office at one point. I don't think it was president, or I remember he was related to, I think he's like a cousin to somebody who ran for president, I think. I don't know, he might bring it up in the book. We'll see. When I was 6, my parents called Bob and me into the living room. We found Pop and Mom, then pregnant with my brother Fred, looking serious and standing near a small wooden barrel with a small slot in the lid. My sons, Pop began in an earnest tone, very soon now, we will be leaving Texas and moving to a farm in Utah. Our parents then smiled as if it were somebody's birthday and we were all going out to eat. I really had no idea what this announcement meant. This may be hard to believe, but I had never even heard the word farm before I was 6. We lived in a town and never talked about such country matters. We didn't even have children's books about farms. We'll have cows, pigs, and chickens, Pop continued. Now I expect you two boys to roll up your sleeves and help us raise some money so we can buy that farm. Raise the money, I thought. How could we possibly help raise the money? Pickled eggs, he said, as if hearing my thoughts. We'll sell pickled eggs to the bars in town. There's a big demand for that sort of thing. We can prepare them right now in our own kitchen. Pop held up a shiny new silver dollar. See this? He asked, smiling. We need 3,000 of these. $3,000, and the farm will be ours. The whole kit and caboodle, and maybe a horse. See that? Oh, I read that part. He dropped the dollar through the slot in the lid in the small wooden barrel and turned to Bob and said, You can be the keeper of the barrel. You'll be in charge of counting. Don, you can help your mother in the kitchen with the pickling of the eggs. That was my assignment, my first responsibility. My humble beginning. I was the pickler of eggs. I was also in charge of the timer. Hard-boiled eggs should never be overcooked. Did you know that? I didn't. It was a big revelation. So, this was back in the day, he was 6, so this was like 1943. This was during World War II. This is back at the time where like child labor laws weren't really a thing yet. So, we'll probably come up to talking about a job in a minute that he got. Reading the comments here. He had a younger brother named Toby who died. Oh, wow. Well, he'll probably bring that up in a minute. An aside. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you something about the book you hold in your hands. Most of what you will read is an accurate amount of my life story. Even at my present age, 84, my memory is still good. A few of the names have been changed to protect the living, though I can't testify that any of them are innocent. I have added artistic verisimilitude, I've never heard that word before, here and there to give interest to what might otherwise turn out to be a bland and uninteresting narrative. Forgive me for that, but I really was a great egg pickler. So he might have changed some of these names to protect some identities, which is, I guess that's understandable. Now let's get back to the show. Although Bob frequently reminded me that he was in control of the money, I took my egg assignment very seriously. I was helping Dad buy a farm in Utah, though I didn't understand exactly what that meant. Mom led me to imagine what life in Utah would be like. Think of the Christmas season with the snow and the sleigh bells. That will be something to look forward to, she said. When Mom said she was looking forward to something, I paid attention. She worked hard to make sure my brothers and I were well fed and had clean clothes, just as her mother did for her. Everyone has a song they sing for you. If you know how to listen, Mom's was about Christmas. Christmas is the time of year when the earth falls in love, Mom would say. A time to pause and think about family and friends, anyone other than yourself. It's a time to exchange gifts, bake cookies, put up a tree, sing carols, and best of all, make preparations for the Christmas dinner. Christmas dinner was a Bluth family custom, in which an onslaught of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and other relatives, invited or not, arrived en masse with stories, jokes, and songs. I'm going to get a drink real quick. Hold on. Did Don write himself? Did Don write this himself? I'm sure he did, yeah. I mean, he most likely wrote it himself, yeah. I don't know why he wouldn't. Mormon families can be quite large, so the house always seemed packed to the rafters. Some of my relatives were natural performers who loved the spotlight, while others could not be coaxed off their chairs. Mom used to recite a little song from church to get the shy ones to participate. All God's creatures gotta sing in the choir. Some sing lower and some sing higher. And some just sit on a telephone wire and clap their hands or clap their paws or anything they got now. That was a song. Those are song lyrics, by the way. Usually it didn't help. They just blushed or ran out of the room. But I always stayed because I didn't mind performing, especially if Mom wanted me to. For little Don, the magic of Christmas included believing in my number one hero. Not God the Father, which my Sunday school teacher would have wanted, but Santa Claus. The idea that at any moment a jolly old fellow in a red suit would be giving gifts under the tree was a delicious sort of magic. And every Christmas Eve, it made falling asleep quite impossible. One such night, when I couldn't stand it any longer, I kicked the upper bunk to see if my brother Bob was awake. "Do you think Santa's been here yet?" I whispered. "I thought I heard the reindeer on the roof." "No, you didn't hear the reindeer on the roof. Go back to sleep." Let's sneak downstairs and take a peek," I pleaded. Waking Bob that night proved to be a big mistake. My brother's face appeared over the edge of the bunk, frowning down at me. "Do you really think reindeer can fly?" he scoffed. "Santa does not have 8 tiny reindeer, Don, and they are not on the roof. Furthermore, Santa doesn't live at the North Pole. He lives right here in the house. Santa Claus is Mom and Dad." Oh, what a dick. Ruining his brother's fun like that. "They're the ones who put the presents under the tree, and that's the truth." Bob settled back in his bunk. "Think about it, Don. We don't even have a chimney. How would Santa get in? You know the doors are locked." Suddenly his face reappeared. "If you tell them I told you this, I'll break all of your pencils. Now be still and go to sleep." Words spoken in kindness are a great joy and comfort. They heal, and they are the stuff upon which we build our dreams. Bob's words were none of that. I decided to ignore him and give a good kick to the lump on the top bunk. Christmas was magic, but it also has its traditional side. Every year, Mom would place a nativity scene on the coffee table in the family room. She would take the beautifully painted figurines of sheep, camels, shepherds, and of course, Mary, Joseph, and the baby out from their box, remove their tissue wrappings, and put them on display. My absolute favorites of the ceramics were the 3 wise men, sometimes called the 3 kings, which were all gilded all over with gold. They arrived at the manger bearing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh from the baby Jesus, Mom explained. That's just like Santa Claus, I thought. The 3 kings brought gifts. It all made perfect sense. Reindeer for Santa, camels for kings. I loved my book of Christmas carols. It was beautifully illustrated with impressive winged angels hovering up in the clouds, keeping their watch over the starlit stable where the Son of God was born. The angels' wings were magnificent, radiant and white and very large. My fascination of their wings was overwhelming to me. I remember thinking, oh, how I wish I had wings so I could fly. The thoughts of a 6-year-old are anything but practical. Still, I was determined. I promised myself that one day I would fly. On Oxford Street, we lived next door to an old woman we called Grandma Terterine. Turrettine? I don't know, that's a weird name. She was ill and would one day pass from this life to join the chorus of angels up above. Then she would have beautiful wings like the picture in my book. Grandma's skin was as white as her hair. She lied on the couch all day long every day, and I was the little boy from next door who brought her flowers. Her sense of smell was still good, but not her vision, sadly. She knew every flower by its fragrance. "Can you stay a while?" she would ask softly. "I'll tell you stories." Grandma's stories were always about adventure, mystery, and romance, about a prince, a princess, and living happily ever after. She spoke a lot about going to heaven to be with the angels, and when she passed, I was glad that she finally got her wish. She had her wings, as I stared at her coffin in the cemetery, trying to picture her flying with the angels. Aunt Viva, my dad's sister, must have seen the concerned look on my face. She put her hand on my shoulder and whispered in my ear, "Don't be sad, Don. Grandma's gone to heaven. She's one of God's angels now." "She can't be," I protested. "The box she's in is too small. There's no room for her wings. Angels have wings. I saw them in my book." "Of course," she replied. "But shortly the wings will grow out of her back." But shortly the wings will grow out of her back. My aunt touched my scapula and said, "These are your wings, my little man, and someday they'll shoot out, and you will fly with the angels too, just like Grandma, just like in the book." I was a little boy, so I believed her. As I write about this, a lyric from Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods came to mind. "Careful what you say, children will listen. Careful what you do, children will see." Chapter 2, The Awakening. Just to be clear, we're not going to read the whole book today. There's over 300 pages. We'd be here for hours. I might separate this in multiple sections. I don't know. Like I said, I'll probably just keep reading until I'm bored. Or until something has to come up. Excuse me, sorry. Chapter 2, The Awakening. We have come to the first turning point in my life story. A moment of time that I remember like a memory in a dream, with images that come and go. A phantasmagoria. My God, Don has quite a vocabulary. These such big words I've never even heard. A phantasmagoria of colors and sounds. I was hunkered down in a chair beside my mom in a very dark room. I was staring up at a great wall. Upon it, I saw an image of a woman dressed in flowing black robes. She hurried down a long flight of stairs, entered a secret chamber, and brushed aside some cobwebs, revealing a large book of spells. She whispered, "I will go myself, in a disguise so complete that no one will suspect. I will change my queenly radiance to a peddler's cloak, a touch of mummy dust to turn my hair white, and from my voice, a scream of fright." Grinning, she turned a small porcelain handle, and a drop of poison screamed its way into her goblet. I snuggled up close to Mom. "A bolt of lightning to mix it well," she commanded, pointing the goblet at the moon. "Now begin thy magic spell." She drank the brew, choked, and with a cackle of laughter, changed into an ugly old hag, an evil witch with bulging eyes and a toothless grin. I had seen movies before, but nothing like this one. To this day, I can't explain why the images had such power over me. I only know they did. The movie was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I was watching the jealous queen make preparations to kill the princess. The hand-drawn animation's vibrant colors, made even more powerful by the dramatic music, reached off the screen and into a secret part of my soul, attached itself, and reeled me in. The feeling was irresistible. I actually completely understand that. Like, every once in a while, man, you see a movie and you're just like, oh my God, it's amazing. You know, movies like Land for Time. I think the last time I felt that was when I saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in theaters. I was like, my God, this movie is really something special. It's incredible. I completely understand where he's coming from with that. I came away from Snow White bowled over by the colors, the story, and the emotion. I didn't know what I had just seen. I didn't know that what I'd seen was called animation. I just liked what I saw, and one taste of it was not enough. I wanted more. But of all the questions I had coming out of the theater that day, the biggest one was this: who was Walt Disney? That was the day Santa Claus dropped to hero number 2. Learning to draw. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully explain the love that I feel for drawing. I think it was embedded in my DNA or in my soul, or perhaps it was put there in a faraway, pre existent life by an angel. It was something involuntary, sort of like breathing for me. And the process of learning to draw was about connecting something inside my head to a feeling in my heart. I wish I could draw. I want to draw so bad, but I'm terrible at it. I really wish I knew how. So how did I learn to draw? I copied characters from comic books. So how did I learn to draw? I copied characters from comic books. After all, how do monkeys learn to hunt, to eat, to groom, and to mate? They watch their peers and copy their behavior. It's the monkey see, monkey do process. That's how we all learn. I collected comic books, paper dolls, and anything else that I could find about the movie Snow White. I drew with my crayons and in charcoal, first on the walls because we were too poor to buy drawing paper. My mom scrimmed and saved and finally bought me a pad of paper. I became infatuated with drawing and puzzled over how I could make my hand-drawn characters move like they did in the movies. I wouldn't allow myself to trace an image, and only felt successful when the cartoon drawing I was working on pleased my eyes. And when I deemed it a good drawing, I kept it displayed on my desktop, and it remained there until a better one replaced. As I would walk by and glance at my latest work, I had a reaction. If my artistic eye still liked it, I smiled and continued on my way. If, on the other hand, I saw flaws in the piece, mistakes I had missed a few days earlier, I knew I had outgrown the drawing artistically and must again pick up the story. Let's see. Daniel, thank you for the $10. Sorry for joining the stream later than expected. Did we get to when Don watched Snow White at age 4 and decided to become an animator? Oh, yeah, we just passed that. We literally just passed that like 2 minutes ago, actually. Yes. I'm sorry about that. Jack, Big Jack's Film says, how's the book? Ching! The alert. Big Jack Film says, how's the book? The book is alright so far. Like, we're only about 10 pages in, so, like, we're not that deep into it. But I'm into it. I'm invested. Let's see, where was I? If, on the other hand, I saw flaws in the piece, mistakes I had missed a few days earlier, I knew I had outgrown the drawing artistically and must again pick up the pencil to make a new drawing of a different character that was even better. No one instructed me to do this. A better drawing just restored normalcy to my small life. To this day, a drawing of mine only has a lifespan of maybe 24 hours before I have to do another one. Musicians spend hours mastering their instruments. A trumpet can make either music or noise. It depends on the player. It is the same with graphic artists. The pencil can make either art or scribbles. It takes work and dedication to master any of life's disciplines. And here's a little drawing of him, I guess, learning how to draw, and just the chaos it caused him, I guess. I'm gonna start reading James Woodrof's book soon. Oh yeah. All right. Chapter 3: Life on the Farm. He moved to that farm in Utah, after all. Hold on, I'm gonna take another drink real quick. To 7-year-old Don's great surprise, the Pickled Eggs project was a huge success. The little wooden barrel got so heavy with silver dollars I couldn't even lift it. Pop bought a farm with a 2-story wooden frame house in Payson, Utah. Actually, it was located west of Payson on the grassy hills of West Mountain. The house was small and barely adequate for our growing family of 2 adults and 4 boys, including our newest little brother Sam. Our house was far away from everything. Dad said our nearest neighbor was a stone's throw away, but who could throw a rock Dad said our nearest neighbor was a stone's throw away, but who could throw a rock a distance of 2 miles? Our farm looked like a set from the 1970s TV show The Waltons, with rusted farm machinery, rakes, shovels, irrigation ditches, a dilapidated barn, giant cottonwood trees, and weeds everywhere. All 99 acres of it were fenced in with barbed wire. Besides the crops of sugar beets, alfalfa, and corn, there was also a dairy farm with 24 cows that had to be fed, groomed, and hand-milked twice daily before and after school. Cows stink. The smell gets into your clothes and permeates your skin. But that's not all. When the old girl decides to urinate, you'd better get off the stool as fast as you can, raise the milk bucket out of the way, and stand back. It's all very messy. I've had experience on farms. They do that. Very, very gross animals. A word of advice. If anyone ever asks you if you would like to learn to milk a cow, just say no. It's not worth it. If you say yes, you're also guaranteed to get a cow's tail slapping you in the face, and the tail is tangled up in spiny little cockleburrs, so when it hits your cheek, and it will hurt bad. Yeah, I haven't had that specifically happen to me, but my sister has a farm. Her dogs and her horse feeders, they will get those little things in there, and they hurt. Like, you'll be petting it, and you'll be petting the fur and stuff, and suddenly you'll just rake across those little spiky balls, and they hurt. They hurt real bad. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, they're like these little spiky balls. You know, like they're really sharp and such. And they just get stuck in the fur. They're not fun. Every Monday was wash day on the farm. Our first chore was the business of heating the water in an old galvanized tub on the kitchen coal stove. This took about an hour. Then, trying not to scald our hands, Mom and I carried the heating tub to old Betsy, the clothes washer on the back porch. Finally, we'd plug her in and the wringers began to rotate, squeezing the water out of the washed clothes. Old Betsy was so loud that you had to shout if you wanted to be heard. It was during one of those horrible Mondays that my shouts turned into screams. The fingers on my right hand got caught in old Betsy's rubber wringers. They kept pulling me in and lifting me right off my feet until my arm was between the wringers up to my armpit. I screamed in agony. Blam! Mom hit the pressure release, and I collapsed under the floor into a heap with a broken arm. Always look on the bright side of life, goes the saying. But with my drawing arm now in a cast, how could I feel anything but self-pity? After a while, my only compensating thought was, no more milking cows. Hooray. Damn, so he actually broke his arm on that. Thank God we live in the modern day. We have washing machines now. Weasel words. Meanwhile, Bob was taking a correspondence course in taxidermy. I didn't understand his fascination with dead animals. I think it was something to do with testosterone, the growing hair, and baying at the moon. Bob's first victim was a weasel. He killed and skinned it himself, just as the manual instructed. While its hide was soaking in a bottle of formaldehyde, I guess that's how to say it, and its skull and bones were boiling on the kitchen stove, we had to open all the doors and windows just to breathe. I'm sure the flies in the next county over heard about the weasel, and because they came in droves. Mom bought a fly swatter just for the occasion. Once the weasel was stuffed, it was placed on the bookshelf in the living room. I would apologize to the poor weasel whenever I walked by. Hello, weasel, I would say. My brother Bob has a brain the size of a pea. You were his first victim, but you won't be alone for long. He's now skinning a pheasant. If you can hear me from way up there in weasel heaven, I think a little revenge might be in order. Come and haunt him. And if you still have teeth, bite him where it hurts, on the nose. The stuffed pheasant's carcass soon took its place next to the weasel on the bookshelf. He leaned sadly to the left and gained the impression that he might, just at any moment, topple over onto his side. Eventually, the taxidermist's book of death was set aside. Bob had discovered girls. He moved on to women? Oh my god, he stuffed women. Oh my god. I'm kidding, no. When Pop said we were moving to a farm, I had no idea it would be such a commitment. If you were raised as a farm brat, you probably hated chores as much as I did. Plowing the field, planting sugar beets, thinning sugar beets, topping sugar beets, and hauling sugar beets to the refinery were just the early morning task. Then we begin the dairy chores, milking the cows, filtering the milk, washing the containers and the milk buckets, cleaning the stables, and giving the cows their breakfast, and making them comfortable with a pitchfork of fresh straw in their stalls. Cows are always pregnant on a dairy farm. That's why they give milk. There's no profit in a dairy farm if the milk is sucked up by the newborn calves. They must learn to drink a ration of their mother's milk from a bucket. It was my chore to wean the calves from their mother's milk, which meant teaching them the joy of doing something totally against their nature. First, I dipped my right hand into a bucket of milk, then stuck my fingers into the calf's mouth. While he was sucking on them, I lowered my hand and the snout carefully down into the bucket. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place. There it is. After about a week of this routine, the calf got the idea that the bucket is where he can get mommy's milk, not Don's fingers. I had come to believe that the calf milk bucket process is a symbol of how humans learn. One must taste the milk of life to discover one's preferences. I call it empirical validation. We could debate this silly notion, but the fact that we learn by experience, not just from books, is undeniably true. Thank goodness for the mentors who showed us the way. There's a cool little picture of young Don with a cow. Or, right here. It's like young Don milking the cow, and the cow is... he's kind of loving it a little too much, if you ask me. He's a little too excited. He's like... Don't get mad at me for making those jokes. Don clearly intended for it. How charming. He is very charming indeed. Promises. There were so many chores, I barely had time to think. That must have been true for my parents, too, as going to church more and more took a back seat to keeping up with the chores. My mother always made sure to tithe, though. It didn't matter how squeezed for money the family was, she would set aside a portion for the church. Little Don was supposed to be learning something while we sang about tithing in Sunday school. I want to give my Lord my tenth, for every time I do, it made me think of all the gifts he gives to me and you. Make a review of Transformers Rise of the Beast once it launches. You made a review about the new D&D movie, so why not? We'll see. I might go see it. But I'll be honest. As a little boy, seeing those coins and folded bills going to the jar for the church just meant fewer nice things for us. Mom, who had the patience of a saint and who took spiritual matters more to heart than Pop, tried to explain it to me. The way she told it, God accused mankind of having robbed him, and mankind asked plaintively, "Wherein have we robbed thee?" God replied sternly. "In tithes and offerings," he commanded. Bring ye all the tithes in the storehouse." If they did this, he proclaimed, he would open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Tithing was like a promise, she said. When she pays the tithe, I don't know how the word is. When she pays the tithe, the windows of heaven will open and we will be blessed. I know how important the promises are, and I like the idea of being blessed, so that made sense to me. Flash. Remember Dad had said, maybe we'll even have a horse? And we did. Disney produced a live-action movie in 1948 called So Dear to My Heart. It is about a boy named Jeremiah Kincaid, played by Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll, that's the kid who played Robin Hood, right? Who is determined to raise a woolly black lamb that had been rejected by its mother. Rumor has it the story was somewhat autobiographical, and close to Walt's own heart. The lamb's name is Danny, after the famous racehorse Dan Patch, who is also featured in the film. Young Jeremiah was so inspired by the champion, a blue ribbon-winning, beautiful black stallion, that he keeps a secret scrapbook about him and enters Danny in the Pike County Fair, hoping he will win the grand prize. Jeremiah learns that a black sheep is never going to take first place, as its wool is practically worthless. Yet, encouraged by messages from the animated figures in his scrapbook, who springs to life and sings him songs, he never gives up on that dream. One lyric, sung by an owl, sticks out in my head. It's what you do with what you got, and never mind how much you got. It's what you do with what you got that pays off in the end. It's the means that you applieth that builds up your stock. Look what David did to Goliath with a little old hunk of rock. Did I say Robin Hood? I thought I said Peter Pan. I'm pretty sure I said... Did I not say Peter Pan? I thought I said Now I'm confused. I don't know if it was fucking... Did I fucking say Robin Hood when I meant to say Peter Pan? I'm so confused now. I feel like I'm being gaslit right now. I'm just kidding. If I said Robin Hood, I meant Peter Pan. My own horse was every bit as inspirational to me as Dan Patch was to Jeremiah, the little boy in the movie. I called him Flash. And despite his never speaking a word, he hands down was one of the best mentors I ever had. I never took him to the fair to get a prize, but to me, he was a blue ribbon winner. He had a shiny black coat with white socks just above the hooves, a white star on his forehead, and an elegant gant that he inherited from his Arabian ancestors. Flash knew his way to the Star Theater in downtown Payson without me having to tug on the rein. Flash knew his way to the Star Theater in downtown Payson without me having to tug on his reins. Every Saturday morning, with excitement in the air, I would ride him 3 miles in the town to catch a Disney movie. During the journey back home, it was he who listened to my boyhood dreams about learning to draw. Would it be possible? I asked him. Could I be an artist and work on a film like the one I just saw? But I'm only 12 years old, and I milk cows. I know nothing. Flash would have been tethered to a tree outside eating grass, not in the theater with me, but he knew just what to say, just how to answer my questions. That was his magic. A whinny meant yes. A fart meant no. He was so encouraging. There was a quiet dignity about Flash, and when I groomed him, combing the cockleburrs out of his mane and tail, I knew he believed in me. He was my closest friend. I'm quite sure that horses, dogs, and cats go to heaven, and perhaps all animals, even birds and insects. If I am lucky enough... Let's see. Oh, I skipped a page. Hold on. If I am lucky enough to get there myself, I'll find Flash, grazing in a beautiful green pasture just beyond heaven's gates. I'll whistle to him, and he'll come running over to greet me. I'll give him a sugar cube, a hug, and a pat on the neck. He always liked that. Then I'll push his forelock off his forehead, kiss the white star, and because by then we'll both speak the same language, I'll be able to thank him properly. We had a great time chatting about the good old days. Aw, that's really sad. That could make... I don't see why... I don't know... man, why didn't he make that into a movie of his? That would have been a great movie. Like, that would have been a cool story about a boy who discovers a horse and stuff. That would have been kind of nice. Again, it's never too late. He could still do it. Don, if you ever see this, not too late. Make a movie about this. It'd be great. Discovering manhood. In our small 2-story wooden frame house, there was a little desk in my upstairs bedroom where I practiced drawing. On my desk, there was a tablet of eggshell drawing paper, my favorite pencils, and some Disney comic books. Sitting at the desk with my pencil and paper made the world feel right. So I called it my laughing place, a term that I borrowed from a Disney flick called Song of the South. But he hasn't seen that in a while. Disney don't talk about that one. Everybody's got a laughing place to go ho-ho. Take a frown, turn it upside down, and you'll find yours I know ho-ho. Never saw a Song of the South, though you can probably understand why. Disney doesn't want you to. Oh, man. I love how he says that his heart has dignity when he farts to say no. I know, right? One might even say all dogs go to heaven. Boo, you're banned. I'm just kidding. Whether you're a farmhand or a city dweller, I recommend you discover your laughing place. You're going to need it. We all need such a place. My dad was never over the moon about me becoming an artist. He tolerated it, just barely. For him, masculinity and art were polar opposites. While the other kids my age were out in the field playing baseball, I was inside with a pencil, and that frustrated him. He was a policeman, a sportsman, a hunter, a farmer, professions that embody manhood. One Christmas, he arranged for Santa to bring me a Schwinn bicycle, top of the line for its day and very expensive. I think he was hoping that I would get some skinned knees or even some serious bruises, anything that would toughen me up. On that Christmas morning, when I saw the bicycle under the tree, I said without thinking, "Great, Dad, it's a bicycle." But what I really wanted was some poster prints or watercolors. His smile turned sour. He tried to hide his disappointment, but it was obvious that I had hurt him. Thank goodness he had my older brother Bob, who was always talking sports and planned to play football in high school. Dad took some comfort in him, and also in the number 3 brother Sam. Football Sam, I called him. He was a jock. Bob and Sam were Pop's perfect heroes. You know how most siblings fight? Well, Sam loved to stir things up. When his buddies came over to play and wanted me out of sight, he would say, "Why don't you go do your little drawings, Donnie?" I wish I had been smarter in those days. I would have countered with a remark of my own. Something like, "Why don't you go chase your little football, Sammy?" Ooh, what a great comeback. In spite of being made fun of by the jocks, I clung to my dream of being an artist. Mom fanned the flames of creativity, phrasing the drawings on my desk and supplying me with plenty of paper, pencils, and watercolors. I was so relieved when I finally saw a photograph of Walt Disney. I had known the name of my hero long before I had even seen a picture of him, and had worried that he might look, well, like me, a sissy. Instead, the air of confidence, debonair mustache, and crooked smile reminded me of my dad and my jock brothers. He was an artist, and he looked so manly. I hung his picture over my head. I hung his picture over my bed. There was hope after all. I'm starting to think maybe Don wasn't, maybe he wasn't that straight, to be honest with you. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just, man, it's just, most boys don't really hang pictures of other men on their walls unless they're, Again, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being gay. I'm just saying. If only Disney owns up that Song of the South exists. I know! They own up to things like Peter Pan, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp. They own up to so much racist shit in the past, but this is like the one exception. For some reason. Like, what did Song of the South do that was so inexplicably racist that the others are okay, but that's not? I think at one point Whoopi Goldberg said, like, release Song of the South. Like, we should see it. It's a piece of history. We should see it. And I agree. I would love to see it. It'd be interesting. Anyway, my manly moments. Milking the cows is where I found my manly moments. God blessed me with large and sinewy hands. I could fill the milk bucket with white foam faster than all of my brothers. Furthermore, the cows seemed to love the feel of my hands. They mooed softly as I sang to them and squeezed their tits. Oh my. I know it's teats. I was intentional. Oh my. For the record, my lovelies... Oh my god, Don, stop. You know what you're doing to me. For the record, my lovelies, the cows, never put a hoof into my milk bucket, a claim that was exclusively mine. I don't say it to boast, it's just that I had a way with the ladies. Cows, at least. My god, Don, you dog. My music angel. My first crush hit me when I was 11. It happened. I saw a girl, and Walt, momentarily, took a step back into the shadows. She was 16 years old and in high school. We never actually met, nor was there ever a word spoken between us. Ever. Okay, so Don is bisexual. Again, nothing wrong with that. I'm just kidding. About an hour from sunset, the school bus picked up us farm kids who lived in West Mountain and carried us to Payson High School to see the senior class musical that Victor Herbert classified The Red Mill. I don't remember anything about the play itself because my attention was fixed on the piano player. Just below the apron of the stage, there was a piano bench sat Bonnie Ackerman. I didn't know her, but I just kept reading her name in the program, Bonnie Ackerman. To my 11-year-old eyes, she was gorgeous in tight blue pedal pushers, a white t-shirt, and soft brown hair pulled back into a ponytail with an orange silk scarf. Every move of her body, her head, and her hands were like poetry in motion. I hope she wouldn't notice me staring at her, but I just couldn't help myself. When the evening was over, I crawled back into the school bus, whispering her name, Bonnie Ackerman. Oh, my camera's acting up. Come on now. Why are you fixing? What the hell? There we go. Sorry about that. Let's see. When the evening was over, I'm just looking on the playback real quick to see when exactly it went blurry. When did it go blurry? Ah, there it was. I zoomed in too close. That's how it is. When I do this, it gets all weird and stuff. The camera gets weird sometimes. Let's see. When the evening was over, I crawled back into the school bus, whispering her name, Bonnie Ackerman. Bonnie Ackerman. Oh, Bonnie. I'm going to name my cows after you. I'm just kidding. As I lay in bed at night, I tried to imagine what it would have been like to sit next to her on the piano bench and play duets. That would have been sheer heaven. The next morning during breakfast, I dropped a bomb on the family. Would it be possible for me to take piano lessons, I asked. I want to play piano, just like Bonnie Ackerman. Dad dropped his spoon into his oatmeal and stared at me. Who the hell is Bonnie Ackerman? Oh, he didn't say it with his voice. It was just a look. Dad was a master of stern looks. I knew them all too well, and I also knew how to deflect them. Did you know that Bonnie means beautiful? I continued blithely. I can't stop thinking about her. Dad's expression softened. There was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Don is discovering girls, he was thinking. Yes, I could read his mind, and I was thinking something I was thinking of something fuck. I was thinking something in reply. Give me a break, Pop. I'm only 11, and like it or not, I'm going to play the piano. It's kismet. Never heard that word before either. I took piano lessons from Miss Lovelace, who had a habit of grinding her teeth and smelled like Fell's naphtha laundry soap. Although her keyboard mastery paled beside that of Bonnie Ackerman, for my hard-working mom and dad, Miss Lovelace was the perfect fit. $2 a lesson. The price was right. I never saw Bonnie Ackerman after that one night, though, but I could still see her in my mind sitting on that bench, proudly playing the piano. Bonnie Ackerman from Payson High School was sent by the gods of Olympus to give me an appreciation of music. I took piano lessons from Miss Lovelace for 3 years, and while no one was going to get a whole lot out of a beginner's piano book, once you can read those little marks on the staff and connect those to the sound of a note, a whole world of sound opens up. Music speaks a universal language with rhythm, melody, and harmony. It goes straight to the heart. I've used what I learned in my piano lessons in every film I ever directed. Interesting. A Don Bluth film about his biography would have been cool to see. And it's made by Disney. Could you imagine it's on Disney Plus? Like, that would be so ironic. The Little Man in the Mirror. Outside the cowshed was a big pile of wood. It was about 5 feet tall and home to bugs, spiders, lizards, and feral cats. A kitten lived in there, a shy little guy who rarely came out into the sun. Once he crept up to me while I was milking and I squirted cow's milk into his tiny face. He liked that and soon became a regular at milking time. I couldn't help wondering what would become of a cat trapped in a woodpile, depending on me to feed him. A cat in a woodpile. I guess we found the inspiration for that one. I started putting a small dish of milk out for him and his family every day. I felt sorry for him. I felt sorry for them. Jesus, I can't read today. It's also like maybe inspiration for Fox and the Hound, which is a movie Don also worked on. I think it was the last movie he worked on at Disney before he left. Like, you know, I remember there was a scene in the Fox and the Hound where Todd is wanting milk and Mother Tweed, Miss Tweed, I think her name was, like, she grabs one of the cow's udders and squirts milk into his face. So it's probably like that. It probably inspired it. If Don animated the scene, it wouldn't surprise me. Morning and night, the cows had to be milked, and the cowshed always smelled of cow manure. Although we washed down the gutters twice a day, the stink remained. It permeated everything, my clothes, my hair, and even my skin. Complaining was useless, and so was bathing. The custom of my generation was a ritual we called the Saturday night bath. Only our faces and hands were attended to during the week. Even more disgusting was the fact that every Saturday night, the whole family used the same bath water. By the time Jim was born in 1946, there was five of us bathing in the same dirty water. My reflection in the mirror got tired of hearing me complain, weary of that disgusting odor, my dirty clothes, and frowning face. So one day, he finally spoke up. So about the reflection talking to me. In case you're wondering, my reflection in the mirror is sort of like Mickey Mouse being Walt's alter ego. The mouse was Walt, but also not. The image in the mirror is me, but also not. Does that make any sense? Maybe I was just talking to myself, giving myself some good advice. Everyone does that at some time or another. I certainly did. After all, I couldn't talk to just anyone about my big questions, not to my siblings, my mom, or my dad, and not even Flash. We hate the farm, the reflection said. We've got to find something better. How about a life in the city? Are you speaking to me? I asked. Yes, it would be perfect, he continued, as if he hadn't heard me. Somewhere where there aren't so many chores. A peaceful place. It's where we can spend our time drawing cartoons. How about Burbank, California? We could move there and go to work for Walt Disney. As my reflection was speaking to me, the wheels of my imagination were spinning out of control. Well, speak up. What do you say to all that? Said my reflection. You're suggesting that we leave everything behind. The cows, my family, the farm. Wait a minute, what am I saying? I can't leave Flash. Of course you can't, said the image in the mirror. We'll take him with us. Right, we'll take him, I agreed. Then, as I was getting ready for bed, reality started to eat away at my dreams. Wait, Flash eats a lot. How will we pay for the hay and the oats? We have no money. My reflection had no answer to that. Come to think of it, how would we pay for anything? I crawled up into my bed and laid staring there at the ceiling and walls as I'd done so for many times before. Counting the hideous little wallpaper flowers, there were 457 of them. I was an idiot to think I could escape the farm. I was trapped, just like the little cat in the woodpile. But I don't think I was the first person to feel that way. Animals or people, sooner or later, everyone feels trapped. What makes it bearable is hope. The next day, when I set out the dish of milk for the woodpile cat, something in my head had shifted. Maybe the cat family had no future, but I knew deep inside that I most definitely did. I resolved to break free from the farm. I would spend more time in my laughing place, perfecting my skills as an artist. I would become the best artist there was, buy new clothes, and bathe daily in my own fresh water. I will go to California, and I will work for Walt Disney. I told my reflection in the mirror that night. I had no idea how this would happen. I just knew it would. I would make it happen. Let's pretend. It's important to develop one's creativity. And every morning of my adult life, I've called upon those creature muscles to save the day, or to just get me out of an awkward situation. When my brain feels under siege by images from social media, my smartphone, or TV, I indulge myself by imagining pictures in my head from the book that I'm reading, from the dream I'm dreaming, or the music that I'm listening to. In 1947, when I was 10, there were no televisions, only radios. I loved listening to radio dramas while imagining in my head the pictures that would go along with the sounds. Stories like Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, The Arabian Nights, Beauty and the Beast, Rumpelstiltskin, and more adult programs like The Shadow, Mr. and Mrs. North, Old Ma Perkins, The Inner Sanctum, and The Romance of Helen Trent. Ah, Helen Trent. Who could forget the narrator's gushy opening lines? I need to take a drink, hold on. Things are about to get a little thirsty, if you know what I mean. If these are the adult stories. Sorry I'm not reading the comments you guys lay down. I'm in the book. All right. Helen Trent, the story that asked the question. Sorry. Helen Trent, the story that asked the question. Can love come to a woman after 35? Can this girl from a small mining town in the West find happiness as the wife of a wealthy and distinguished English gentleman, Lord Henry Winthrop? Winthrop? That's how you say it? Or is it Winthrop? Winthrop, I don't fucking know. Don't those words invoke curiosity? Don't you want to hear more? Every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, I would stretch out of the floor by the radio console to listen to my favorite show, Let's Pretend. It was a half hour of incredible enjoyment, with great radio actors backed up by astonishing music and sound effects. It was sponsored by Cream of Wheat cereal. I ate a lot of that cereal. Not my favorite, always lumpy. Each radio episode began with a catchy jingle. Cream of wheat is so good to eat that we have it every day. We sing this song and it makes us strong and we simply shout hooray. It's good for growing babies and grown-ups too to eat. For all the family's breakfast, you can't beat cream of wheat. Cream of wheat sounds a little, Is it still around? Wouldn't surprise me if it's not. What was so exciting about an old radio show? It wasn't the hot cereal. It was the feeling that came from imagining. Yeah, I think this might be before fridges were a thing, so the milk was always, like, warm, wasn't it? Ew. I don't think I've ever had warm cereal before. I've had oatmeal, but that's not... I don't think that's the same as cereal, is it? I don't know. It was the feeling that came from imagining. The scripts were intriguing, the dramatization excellent, but most of all, I enjoyed seeing the images in my head as I listened. Let's Pretend ran from March 24th, 1934, all the way through October 23rd, 1954, during what some might call the golden age of radio. Congratulations to the director and creator of the show, Miss Nilla Mack. Thank you, Nilla Mack. We've never met, but you changed my life. It's a shame that I didn't realize the value of your contribution to my creativity when I was young. I would have written you some fan mail. I've made myself a note. Right after I visit Flash in the hereafter, I'll go and find you. I'll be right back. I'm going to turn on the AC. It's getting a little warm in here. Won't take a second. Alright, I'm back. Okay. Like I said, told you it wouldn't take a second. How much better would The Black Cauldron be if it was directed by Don? I don't know, man. Producers were struggling with that movie. Nobody was happy with it. So I don't think it really would have mattered. It always curdled too. Ew. Yeah, I know. Alright. Drawing from life. I was weighed down with farm chores and waiting for something that would put an end to the monotony. The miracle I was waiting for came from a place I had never been, 60 miles north of Payson and beyond the range of our old 1937 studbreaker, Salt Lake City. The year is 1947 marked the centennial of the arrival of the Mormon pioneers in the Salt Lake Valley, and the year that the people of Utah went crazy celebrating Days of 47, which would culminate in the Main Street Parade featuring marching bands, floats, equestrian clubs, rodeo clowns, dancing bears, elephants, and the Days of 47 Queen. For weeks, news of preparation for Days of 47 was in all the papers, and more importantly, the subject of a lot of backfence gossip across the state. Before the parade, the Days of 47 Queen had to be chosen from a roster of 38 contestants from all over the state. The judges' votes were unanimous. The honor went to an 18-year-old from Spanish Fork called Colleen Robinson. Her movie star beauty and her shy demeanor made her the Centennial's darling. Even the most poker-faced judge cracked a smile when he announced that she had won. One judge remarked, "She's like a ray of sunshine in a very dreary world." "Oh, much more," said another. "She's like a sparkle of light on muddy water." "You guys aren't even close," said a kid. "She's like a strawberry shortcake topped with vanilla ice cream, hand-cranked." "Oh, you know that shit's good when it's hand-cranked." 8,000 dignitaries crowded the halls of the state capitol building to witness her coronation ceremony. You could have heard a pin drop after the horns announced Colleen's arrival. She glided down the grand staircase and glittered onto the main floor. The crowd went crazy and the house came down. It was like a grand Hollywood premiere, only better. The fairy tale gown she wore was made of white sateen. In the summer sun, it blinded the eyes of all that looked upon it. 5 seamstresses had racked up 2,000 hours to create it, using 20,000 rhinestones, sequins, and pearls to embroider scenes of covered wagons, oxen, and handcarts on the 8-foot-wide hooped skirt, one pearl and sequin at a time. The Queen's 27-foot train was flanked on either side by 12 lovely maids of honor. The weight of the dress, just over 85 pounds, created such a stir among the locals. Several farmers, upon hearing this, scratched their heads and took bets. "She won't make it," they said. "The dress is too heavy. Even if they can get her up onto the float, she'll kneel over before it crosses the finish line." I saw none of this brouhaha. That's literally the word he uses. I heard it all from the spot on my floor on the farm in Payson, stretched out by the radio. So you can imagine the excitement I felt when Dad gathered the family together. Bob, me, Fred, Sam, and little Jim in Mom's arms one evening to announce the biggest scoop ever. "Start packing, kids. We're going to Salt Lake City to see the Queen." "Will the family studbreaker go that far?" I asked. The car was old and difficult to start. Cut to wiping the grease from his hands, Dad's mechanic boldly announced, "She's as good as new. Have a good time." And "She's as good as new," I repeated. Who knew that a family car was a she? An artist makes drawings every day, some good, some bad. Up to this point, mine had been copies of characters from comic books. But for the first time ever, I drew from real life. As Walt Disney once wrote, "Be inspired by what you see around you in the real world, and don't draw things, Draw your feelings. Watching the Days of 47 parade gave me goosebumps. The beautiful floats, the brass bands, the click of the horses' hooves on the asphalt, the queen and her entourage sparkling in the morning sunlight, the applause from both sides of the street. Oh my, so loud it was deafening. If only I could capture this magical moment in a bottle, I thought to myself. Then it occurred to me that I could. I could draw what I was feeling on paper. In the weeks that followed, I drew at least 20 versions of the Days of 47 Queen, shading each one carefully with my new colored pencils. I resolved to never again copy other artists' drawings. From that on, I told myself I will draw what moves me. My next real-life subject was a monkey. I called him Jocko, little knowing that I would one day meet a famous boy named Jacko who also had a pet monkey named Bubbles. More on that later. He's talking about Michael Jackson. My Aunt Melba had found a little spider monkey running loose in Liberty Park in Salt Lake City. The poor little thing took to Aunt Melba right away, but her small apartment would never do for such an animal. Since I lived on a farm, I decided that I would be the perfect caregiver. Mom gave him a little red cap and a little red jacket and a cap. I put him on the handlebars of my Schwinn and showed him off in the Payson Onion Days parade. So Don also owned a monkey. That's interesting. I lived in Payson, Utah for 5 years, and I can't recall a single farmer planting onions. Nevertheless, Jocko was the highlight of the parade, even upstaging the Onion Day Queen. I remembered her frowning upon being upstaged by a monkey on a bike riding just in front of her dazzling float. It was clumsy of me to take the position in the parade lineup, but I didn't choose it. It was assigned to me. If I ever see that young lady again, I must apologize. Jocko lived in our backyard in his own cage we outfitted with a tree stump for I can't talk today. Jocko lived in the backyard in his own cage we outfitted with a tree stump for climbing, some warm blankets, and a swing. One morning, I noticed the giant cottonwoods along the ditch bank were dropping leaves. Some got caught in the chicken wire of the cage, providing endless amusement for Jocko. When he pulled a leaf inside, his screams of delight assured us that all was well with the little simian. However, one chilly morning, I found him on the floor of his cage, stiff as a board and covered with frost. I may have known how to care for cows, but clearly I knew nothing about caring for monkeys. Tearfully, I carried Jocko into the house and placed him under a towel next to the coal stove. The whole family cried, but the funeral and burial would have to wait until the chores were done. Poor Jocko, I thought. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. Aw, they left him out in the cold. What the fuck? That's so sad. Finally, the chores were over, and the family re-entered the house to attend to the monkey business. There were broken dishes everywhere. The wet towel was still lying by the coal stove, minus one monkey. Jocko screamed from the kitchen table and threw another dish at the wall. Oh! He's not dead, he's just cold as hell. Oh, man. Wow, okay. Jocko screamed from the kitchen table and threw another dish at the wall. Well, said Mom, I can see that Jocko needs a new home. I can't have him living in the house, and he won't survive outside. After a moment of thought, she smiled and said, I know the perfect spot. I shook the whimpering monkey's tiny paw, wished him well, and handed him over to the Hoggle Gardens zookeeper. Don't worry, Don, said the keeper. We'll take good care of him. He'll have lots of friends here. Please keep him warm, I said. He almost died. Someone told me once that if it weren't for December, no one would really appreciate May. Someone once told me that if it weren't for December, no one would appreciate May. If it weren't for the bitter, there would be no sweet. This sort of thing. When you're young, you never think about dying. Life is an adventure. Jocko seemed more like a little man than an animal. He could be a clown, but he didn't need to be center stage. Sometimes he did sly, funny things that you'd miss unless you were paying attention. He was like a master of comedy. I practiced drawing him in his gags, teaching my hand and eye how to animate expressions and gestures. Jocko was my comedy mentor. Watch out for that tree. My first brush with the Grim Reaper happened in the 4th grade. Pentinent was the name of my school. The building was a Victorian sandstone, towered 3 stories, and looked like the Arthurian castle. The myth that went with it stated that an Indian chief, Pentinent, had died and was buried underneath it. His ghost haunted the school halls at night, hunting for the names of children who didn't do their homework. I could never connect the dots. Why would an old Indian chief care about my homework? I wondered. Still, why tempt the fates? Avoid the curse. My homework always arrived on time. Anyway, my nemesis was not the old ghost, but a giant cottonwood tree. While playing tag with my friends of the class on the grassy hills surrounding the school, I ran full speed into a tree trunk 2 feet in diameter. When I regained consciousness, my friends were standing over me, giggling. Why did you do that? Are you crazy? The school nurse patched up my bleeding face and called my parents. I had no explanation for what happened. I didn't see the tree. The word crazy kept coming up between my parents and the doctors, and next thing I knew, they were sticking little electrodes onto my scalp and pushing little electronic buttons to see if crazy was a possibility. When the ordeal was over, crazy was ruled out, but brainstorm was penciled on the medical form. Congratulations, Doc. Congratulations, Don, said the doctor. Congratulations, Don, said the doctor. You have a mild form of epilepsy. But don't you worry, you'll be fine. Just take these little pills every day. And yes, one more thing. From now on, walk in the woods. No more running. You may continue to experience small blackouts. How long do I have to live, Doc? I asked, fearful of this monster lurking inside of me. Give it to me straight. He laughed. You don't have the big epilepsy. You have the little one. He called it peanut mal, the little bad. With these little pills, you should live a long, normal life, he said. He said it with a straight face. But as young as I was, I knew he was lying. The sodium pentanol pills reduced my energy and would eventually put a big strain on my liver. I tossed the pills and began a hunt for a better way. But to this day, I found nothing other than rest that reduces the frequency of my seizures. Wow, so he has epilepsy. That's really interesting. Wow, I never would have guessed that Don had epilepsy. That's interesting. I learned to take my diagnosis seriously. A peanut mal blackout can easily turn into a grand mal, which is what happened in the 1960s when I was driving on the California 405 highway. I had ignored the warning signs of fatigue and hunger. When my brain shut down, the lights went out. My Toyota pickup flipped over, and I had to struggle to pull myself free through a broken window of the cab, cutting a deep gash in one arm. I gained a respect for peanut mal, and I always try to get plenty of rest. Here's a drawing of Don after he hit that tree. Got the little squirrels in the tree and everything. Chapter 4, The Rites of Passage. I think this might be the last chapter I read today because we're over an hour in. Let's see how many pages I got. Well, it's a short chapter, so maybe we'll stick to that. Maybe we'll keep reading a little later. We'll wait and see how far it goes. Chapter 4, The Rites of Passage. From my vantage point at 84 years young, trying to remember the events that shaped my life requires a bit of thought and an excellent memory. Both require prayer. When exactly did I go through my rites of passage? When did I stop being a boy and turn to a man? I can't be sure. I think my metamorphosis was spread out over time. At first, I thought my baptism was an obvious place to start. First, you should know that LDS kids are usually baptized around 8 years old, not at birth. At 8, I remember obediently following the elder down the stairs into a clear pool. I took a breath and pinched my nose shut as he instructed, and then as I gently plunged backwards into the water, I wasn't afraid, but felt impatient at all the wavering figures of adults standing around and watching. What are you all waiting for, I wondered. What's the big deal? With a whoosh, I was standing again, dripping and gasping like a fish. I simply didn't have a clue what was going on during that important rite of passage, so I'm not including it on this particular list. Understanding came later, as you'll find out. When I was 9 and my older brother Bob was 12, we were sitting on a fence watching our neighbor's bull in the corral. My father had rented the bull to service the cows, meaning the bull would make them pregnant so they would give milk. Just as the bull mounted one of the cows and started doing his business, Bob turned to me and said, "Did you know that Mom and Dad do that all the time? It's called sex." What? I stammered. Yep. Dad gets on top of Mom, just like that bull there. That's where the babies come from. Keep watching, Don. You need to learn about sex. Someday you'll be doing it too. I remember falling off the fence. That can't be true, I thought. But it was too late. The words had been spoken and the image were seared into my brain. No going back now. Yeah, once you find out where babies come from, that thought immediately comes to your head that your parents did it. And that's a thought that no one wants to have. Like, I don't want to think about my parents having sex. It's weird. It'd be gross. But leave it to an older brother to do that to a kid. It'd be pretty funny. It is pretty funny. A 12-year-old would do that. If I had a little brother, I'd probably have done it too, honestly. Just to be that guy. So it wasn't the stork after all. Once the engines of curiosity had been set in motion, there were questions. Many questions. For days I stared at my parents, trying to picture them doing it. Then came the thought of my aunts and uncles, and then the church bishop, every one of them doing it. The thought put a smile on my face. Egad, what have I been missing? Birds do it, bees do it, even educated fleas do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. From my own study of anthropology, I had learned that in many tribal cultures, by the age of 12, a boy is taken from his mother's arms by the elder, by force if necessary. The mothers support this tradition. In fact, they encourage it. Oh, they may put up a fight when the elders snatch their male children from their arms, but it's just a show. The boys must then undergo a test that requires great courage. This initiation rite will welcome him into the society of men. The test could be anything from leaping off a 100-foot tower with vines tied to each of his legs, to lying in a bed of fire ants and not crying as they sting him, to joining the hunters and bringing home his first kill to feed the village. Basically, the coming of age requires two things: great manly strength and an attractive muscular appearance, and a skill that would qualify one to be a husband, a provider of food and shelter, and a protector of one's family and the village. The male of the species often assumes a dominant role in the animal kingdom. The Yelt struts onto a meadow, showing off his antlers, ready to defeat any competitors that would steal his harem. Look at me, ladies, he seems to say. I am a winner. There is no male better than me. I will be your mate, and we will make the best babies. If he is challenged by another, there will be a fight, and the winner takes all. Thus the genes of the species are strengthened. In my days, the boys who had gone through the initiation were the teenage Utah boys, the gladiators of the harvest. Their favorite watering hole was the Saratoga Springs swimming pool. There in the locker room they showered, parading their manhood buck naked for all to see. Then on with the swimsuits and into the pool. My very own dad stood among them, and he fit right in. Alright, there's a picture here with the cow and stuff. Fortunately, they're not doing it, but I mean, there you are. As you can see, I guess they are getting close, very close. Don fell off the fence, which is pretty funny. They were a grand fraternity, marked with pride, envy, and a lot of bragging, posing, swearing, and telling dirty jokes. Like you haven't done enough of that in this book, Don. I remember thinking to myself, that's the look of a man. That's what I'm supposed to be. The farm boys didn't go to Saratoga Springs merely to wash the harvest red off their bodies, or even swim. It was something of greater importance. It was... Gee, I have hiccups, sorry. It was a competition, not unlike the strutting elk on the meadow who was the best athlete, who could do the best jackknife into the pool, who could swan dive, who was the man with the most mojo, or you might say, who had the biggest antlers. It was wild and fun to watch, but at the same time, it was serious business. That was when I began to see my father in a different light. He was young, strong, and handsome. He was one of them, a gladiator of the harvest. I, on the other hand, was a skinny little boy. I felt like that frail little deer from Bambi who was on the meadow one day looking sheepishly up at an adult stag, not realizing that the powerful beast before him was his father. Bambi was facing the great prince of the forest, the epitome of strength, and he found himself unable to speak. One night in the privacy of my room, I stood before the mirror, completely naked, standing in my own reflection. "Bird legs," I said. "I have bird legs, skinny arms, and practically no chest at all. A most discouraging sight." "Why do you always complain of me?" said my reflection, staring back. "You have potential. You are capable of more. If you don't like what you see, change it. And for heaven's sake, put some clothes on." The moment in front of the mirror was the turning point of my own rite of passage. I had to gain weight, meaning muscle, and figure out how to strut around like a peacock. That would take care of one of the requirements of being a man. As for the other, being a good provider, that was the next big challenge. Could I really bring home the buffalo to feed the village? I had a great uncle named Oscar. I never met him. He lived long ago somewhere in Sweden. I'd read that he was a scrapper when he came to defending his family, like a sheepdog that chases off the wolf. That's why when I discovered I had a guardian angel, I chose Oscar as his name. I confided that I had a guardian angel to a friend one day. "You're making that up," he scoffed. "How do you know such a thing?" I shrugged. "I just know. Sometimes I sense he's there, even when I'm sleeping." My friend narrowed his eyes. "What makes you so sure your angel isn't a she, not a he?" "It's a he," I insisted. "But either way, it makes no difference. I just know he pushes me out of harm's way and is guiding my path to success." When my friend still seemed skeptical, I gave an example. "I was once kicked in the head by a horse." Well, that explains the brain fog. I ignored him and kept telling the story. I got knocked to the ground. It was a lights out moment, a close the lid and cover me up moment. But Oscar pushed me aside at the last minute so the hooves just scraped my head. That was an accident. "It was Oscar," I said. Here's another example for you. Dad worked all the time. My farm was 99 acres across and there was just one of him. One day, I decided to help my father rest a spell and volunteered to take over the raking of the hay in the south field. I wanted to help my family, the way I believed a real man should. I'm sure that Oscar the Angel scowled as I crawled up under the seat of my cylinder rake and took the horse's leather reins into my hands. Oscar knew I was only 10, and in over my head. The horses were almost as large as Clydesdales with... I don't know what a Clydesdale is. With huge muscles and hooves 12 inches in diameter. The rake was a lethal-looking contraption. Oh, it's like a machine. Right out of a medieval torture chamber. A long rotating cylinder, suspended on wheels at either end, with hundreds of steel prongs with little knives mounted on its rotating surface. They would pull the crop of hay in neat little rows for hauling. I was concentrating on the gait of the horses, as that regulated the speed of the rotation of the rake, and listening to the cylinder's prongs stabbing noisily at the ground. I didn't notice the storm clouds gathering. Lightning struck a tree not 50 feet away. The horses spooked and bolted, the reins slipping from my fingers. As the horse galloped across the field with both hands, I clutched at my seat, desperately trying to hang on. Meanwhile, the cylinder of the rake spun beneath my feet, its steel prongs threatening to turn me into a hamburger. "You can't hold on," the prongs jeered. "Just let go. It won't hurt too much." Suddenly, Oscar was barking orders in my ear. "Pay no attention to the prongs. They're evil. Don't let go." He kept repeating over and over, "Just hang on." I felt myself begin to slide into the waiting prongs, and in that horrible black moment, Oscar made his moves. The horses reached the far end of the field and abruptly stopped. The rake stopped. The prongs stopped. Everything stopped but me. I sailed through the air and landed onto the rear ends of the horses, startling them once again. As they broke into the gallop, Oscar snapped, "Get off the rake!" Trembling, I untangled myself from the reins and jumped away. Dad ran up to where I was sprawled on the ground with an angry look. "Are you all right? Are you all right?" "I'm okay," I replied. "Good," he pointed to the house. "Now get inside. We'll talk about this later." Thereafter, Dad confined me to the house and house chores. "Stay out of the field and off the farm machinery," he ordered. Mom agreed with him, and I couldn't help but think, how am I to become a man? I needed to be in the fields with my brothers, yet I became a houseboy, mopping floors, washing dishes, ironing shirts, changing diapers, making beds while my brothers jeered at me. The most odious of all the house chores was buffing the eggs. Between the time a hen lays her eggs in the chicken coop and the eggs get sold in the marketplace, they need to be cleaned. Just laid eggs are covered with poop, feathers, and straw, and all that stuff has to be removed, practically sanded off to make pristine white eggs. During this time, I stopped eating eggs and went back to an oatmeal breakfast. The workload of the Payson farm was putting a strain on the family, and especially on my parents' marriage. One day, a loud argument erupted in the kitchen. My parents, who were mostly calm folks, were going at it. Mom was grabbing dishes out of the cupboards and throwing them at the walls, and Pop was swearing and trying to calm her down. I can only guess that it had something to do with bills and money. Sorry, I'll read some comments here real quick. Please review Murder Drones. I've never even heard of Murder Drones, so I don't know what that is. And I thought Cinderella had it bad. Well, it's not like Don's being abused. He's just in a very strict household. I think there's a difference. I grew up in a strict household. I wouldn't say I was abused though, at least physically. You know the saying, something's rotten in the state of Denmark? Well, whatever it was now in Payson, stinking up the kitchen. Too many bills, too many chores. Besides the 24 cows that had to be milked both morning and night, there was the plowing and planting of the crops right up to the time of the harvest. Late at night from my bed, I could hear the faraway sounds of the tractor. Dad was still plowing the fields, all alone, to provide for us, his family, which now had one more mouth to feed, little Suzanne's. When I am a man, I said to myself under the ugly little wallpaper roses, I will be like my dad. Whatever it takes, I will do it. I will be very rich, and I will provide. And I will do it by becoming a great artist, like my mentor, Walt Disney. Words, words, words. How easy it is to dream from the warmth of your bed when you're only 12 years old. Chapter 5, A New Beginning in Salt Lake City. Yeah, we'll keep going. That was a really short chapter. Even with the entire family working hard, the farm was financially ruining us. The pressure to make ends meet meant sometimes Dad's temper got the best of his usual patience. On the rare occasion that happened, my siblings and I would all run for cover until Mom could calm him down. However, there was one button we could reliably push that would always set him off. He made it very clear that he would never tolerate disobedience. We had a choice: obedience, his belt, or a green branch picked from the willow bush of the backyard. Though obedience was the best choice, Bob and I chose to pour gasoline on the willow bush and set it on fire instead. It was our secret plan to kill it. It was an evil plant and had to die. No more would its thin green branches whip the back of our legs. No more could Dad say, "Go pick me a willow." The bush would be dead, unavailable, out of business. That was the plan, but it didn't work. See, the fiendish bush grew back, bigger than ever, and laughed at us. "I'll get you two for this," it threatened. "In the future, I'll grow super green willows, bigger than before, and they'll hurt more. Go away, get out of my sight." The farm was killing Dad. The willow bush was slowly killing both Bob and me, and my guardian angel Oscar seemed to be missing. Something had to be done. So in the summer of 1949, Dad and Mom sold the farm and moved us all to Salt Lake City. It was a new beginning. Gone were the cows, the sugar beets, the chores, and the evil bush. Also gone was Flash, my horse, my dearest friend and mentor. I don't remember saying goodbye to him. Why wouldn't I remember a thing like that? A truck with a horse trailer, I think, came to pick him up, and I watched Flash disappear down the long dirt driveway. Finally, when he was out of sight, I cried. But I always had questions in the back of my mind. Was the memory right? Is that what really happened? Recently, I asked my brother Sam, "What happened to Flash?" "He ran away," he told me. "What? Where did you hear that?" I asked him. "From Dad," he replied. And there's a drawing of Flash being taken away in the trailer. Seems a little happy to get out of there. So, man, that boy was weird, okay? Had epilepsy and stuff. I'm just kidding. Did our father arrange to secretly sell the horse to spare us the grief of seeing him be taken away? Or was Dad's story true? Did Flash run off on his own because we were abandoning him? Or could it be that Flash was an angel in disguise? One that came to work his magic on our family, and having done so, moved on to serve another boy or girl. The last version of that story had a ring of truth, though. To this day, I picture my beautiful black stallion with a child on its back, his hooves clopping slowly down the road, listening to another child's dreams. Concerned that he's going to turn to glue, right? That's what happened to him? Oh, that would be so sad. Television. It was the summer of 1950. I was 12 and living in a brand new house with a basement. The house was located on Nevada Street in Salt Lake City. The house also had a bath with running water and a white porcelain tub, to which you could splash about on any day of the week and to your heart's content. I had never seen such a place, so clean, so warm, and with so many convenient bathroom fixtures. Dad was no longer a farmer. Along with a change in his temper for the better, he became an insurance salesman, and his sales assistants were his sons Bob, Don, and Fred. Unlike pickling eggs or milking cows, my new Salt Lake City chore came in a clean box. 400 envelopes containing ads for Blue Cross insurance. I earned my allowance delivering them to 400 doorsteps in the posh neighborhoods of the well-to-do who lived up on the avenues, delivering circulars. That was the routine every Saturday. On some Sundays we went to church. On the Sundays we didn't, I devoted myself to drawing. During the week, the routine was homework, piano lessons, and of course, drawing. My favorite Bible story. Some of the best stories are from the Bible, and Bible stories have inspired so many of my movies. Topping the list is Joseph, who was sold into Egypt by his 10 brothers. It's about God, family, love, betrayal, repentance, and reconciliation. What a tale. What a tale. It all began when Jacob, the father of 12 sons, showed a preference to 2 of his children, Joseph and Benjamin. Jacob gave Joseph, the elder of the 2, a coat of many colors, and this angered the other 10 brothers. Later in the fields, the brothers were overcome by jealousy. They ripped the coat from Joseph's back, threw him into a deep pit, and then left him there to die. They then killed an animal and sprinkled blood on the coat, and when they returned to their father, telling him that Joseph had met a tragic end, Jacob was inconsolable. But wait. Judah, one of Joseph's brothers, spotted a caravan in the distance on its way to Egypt. I see an opportunity for gang, he said. Look there. The brothers took Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the passing merchants. In Egypt, the strapping young lad was sold a second time to a man by the name of Potiphar. Yeah, DreamWorks made a short film about this called Joseph, King of Dreams. It's actually not a bad movie. It's actually a pretty good movie despite being direct-to-video. Like, it's actually pretty good. Like, it's not... It's supposed to be like a prequel to Prince of Egypt. It's the story of Joseph. It's actually like a pretty good direct-to-video sequel, actually. It's actually... Or pretty cool. You get what I mean. Let's see. Jacob became the ruler of Potiphar's house and resisted the advances of Potiphar's wife, who found the young man extremely attractive. When he rejected her advances, her love quickly turned to hate. She falsely accused him of abuse, and Potiphar had Joseph arrested and cast into prison. So yeah, the Joseph King of Dreams movie, they made that change to where Potiphar learned about his wife cheating on him. In the original story, that never happened. Potiphar never learned that his wife was trying to cheat on him. He firmly believed Joseph was abusing her and sent him to jail. Sorry, he was in the movie he wanted him killed and executed, but when he found out the truth, he just sent him to jail instead. In the book, though, he just sends him straight to jail to rot. Like, you'll suffer for what you've done, basically. But eventually, the Pharaoh would come in and intervene. There, Joseph met 2 prisoners, Pharaoh's chief butler and the chief baker, and through the power of God, interpreted their dreams. Pharaoh heard of this miracle and summoned Joseph to the palace. Yeah, it wasn't Potiphar who brought him to the Pharaoh. It was just the Pharaoh who did it. Pharaoh's dream was troubling him, and Joseph told him there would be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph was 30 years of age when Pharaoh put him in charge of storing corn, and when the famine struck all the lands around, countries sent emissaries to Joseph in Egypt to buy corn, including Joseph's brothers. Just think about it. Joseph became the most powerful man in all of Egypt and the surrounding countries, and the brothers were forced to come to Egypt seeking food with no knowledge of Joseph's power. His story is a wonderful example of the hero's journey. I don't want to give away the ending. You can read about it yourself. Genesis 45, 1-28. Will they recognize him or be reconciled? What will Joseph do when he sees them? It's a must-read. You're going to love it. Spoiler warning, he does forgive them. Sorry, I'm that guy. One day I looked up and saw a strange-looking wire contraption from the neighbor's roof. A gadget. I was told that picked up signals from a tall structure on Sugar House, the hilltop just above the town. I pointed to that faraway, mysterious structure and asked Dad, "What's it for?" That dawn, he explained, is a television transmitter. It sends signals to the antenna of the neighbor's roof. The antenna then sends the signal to their TV, and the neighbors will see pictures, like a movie. Television will replace radio. We won't just listen to the news anymore. We'll get to watch it happen. He paused and then proclaimed, "TV is the future, son. A gift from heaven." Television sets were expensive, Television sets were expensive in those days. Oh, they're not expensive now. Well beyond our family budget. My curiosity to get a glimpse of this new device was driving me mad until finally I peeked into the neighbor's window and saw a fluttering blue light coming from a small round screen in a console. The images on the screen moved all right, but they were in black and white. It was a bit disappointing. I went to the mirror in my bedroom. Mirror, mirror on the wall, what can you tell me about the future of television? It has no future. It's a fad and will go away, said the boy in the mirror. It can't compete with the big, colorful dazzle of the movie screen. Are you sure about that? I asked. I see antennas springing up all over the city. I want to watch it. It beckons to me. Remember that story of the piper and the flute? You know, the one where the rats follow the music and are drowned in the river? That's what it feels like. I'm one of those rats. Our family needs a TV, and that's all there is to it. I dream about it day and night. Well, said the boy in the mirror, suit yourself, but you know what happened to the rats. Why don't you try reading a book? You're illiterate, you know. I'm not illiterate, I grumbled. I just don't have time to read. It takes too long. That was true. Ever since I started reading, I had to read out loud, and solely to understand what was on the page. This caused me some embarrassment in school. But I was more concerned that reading just took precious time away from my drawing. Now I know better. As Walt Disney once said, there's more treasure in libraries than in the whole of the Spanish Main. The boy in the mirror shrugged. You want to be like Walt? Then start reading. Our Own Box. Christmas of 1950 was a holiday supreme. Or maybe supreme. Did he mean surprise? Hey, ATM, nice to see you here. Dad brought home a beautiful blonde wood. Christmas of 1950 was a holiday. I guess he meant to say surprise instead of supreme. That's what it says here. It says supreme. That's interesting. Okay. Dad brought home a beautiful blonde wood cabinet that housed a combination radio, a phonograph, and a TV. We gathered around it that Christmas day as he turned it on. The screen flickered and lit up, and my jaw dropped. There he was, my hero, moving and talking. My first glimpse of Walt Disney as a real person, not a photograph. He was promoting his newest full-length animated feature, Alice in Wonderland, on the TV special 1 Hour in Wonderland. The clips of the Alice animation, even in black and white, were to die for. So for those who don't know what that is, this was like kind of a famous thing. It was a cut down version of Alice in Wonderland. It wasn't the full movie, and it obviously wasn't in color, but it was meant to be kind of like a sneak peek of the actual movie. He means it was a supreme experience. Well, from the way he wrote it, it just sounds like it was supposed to be a surprise, because he's talking about getting a TV for Christmas, so that would come as a surprise because his family didn't have the budget or the money to buy one. So, I don't know. It just sounds more like surprise would have been a better word than supreme. I don't know. But as I was saying, yeah, so this was like a cut down, watered down version of the Alice in Wonderland movie to encourage people to go see the full thing in theaters. Like, imagine like a sneak peek or whatever. Which back then I guess made sense to do. The clips of the Alice animation, even in black and white, were to die for. I read that already, sorry. Our TV unified the family. Most evenings, my siblings, my parents, and I sat mesmerized, staring at the box. That's what people called it back in those days. As we watched, we also chatted, laughed, threw pillows, and munched on chips and dip. We watched world news, documentaries, variety shows, mysteries, and puppet shows like Howdy Doody and Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. It wasn't just great fun, but so much more. Having a TV was like opening a window. We could see the world and connect with people who were complete strangers to us. My favorite comedy show was Your Show of Shows, starring Sid Caesar and Imogen Coca, both highly lauded comedians. Their gift to me was laughter. I owe my sense of humor to them. During the production of a movie, whenever I'm looking at how to invoke laughter, I still think of Your Show of Shows and the matchless wordplay and timing of Sid and Imogen. Starstruck. Many years later, as a director of animation for An American Tail, I had the opportunity to work with Sid Caesar, who at the time was recording the voice of Henry the Pigeon. The role would eventually be given to Christopher Plummer. Anyway, he was asking me for direction. As I stood there beside him, I could only think, how could this be happening? Mr. Caesar is a world-renowned actor, and I'm just a skinny little kid from West Mountain. I told the image in the mirror that night about working with one of my heroes. By this time, the boy in the mirror had turned into the man in the mirror. But his message was the same as it was before. "You're boasting," he said. "I'm not boasting," I snapped. But the man in the mirror wasn't going to let it go. "You really think you're hot stuff, don't you? So you worked with Sid Caesar. Just because you get to work with the rich and famous doesn't change a thing. I can still smell the stink of the cows on you, farm boy." I said defiantly, "I'm just a bit starstruck, that's all." That's what I call old school. Sid Caesar was a legend. The girl next door. Nola Peterson, the girl next door. What a cliche, right? I was in the 7th grade at Dilworth Elementary, Salt Lake City, and Nola caught my eye. The Petersons lived across the street, actually. Not next door. They were a family of 5. 2 boys, 2 girls, and a mom. The dad was out of the picture. Gwendolyn, Nola's older sister, was the undefeated champion of telling tales from the crypt. Stories of ghosts, vampires, werewolves, and the undead. She told these tales to us, my siblings and me, and Nola and her brothers, outside after dark in the bushes and by the light of whatever moon was available. The beast with 5 fingers, Gwen would begin, was finally dead. The hand had been cut from the master's wrist and laid upon the chest in the coffin. The evil ring was still on its finger when the lid was shut tight and locked. Sealed inside that coffin, the hand would never kill again. Then Gwen would pause and look around at her wide-eyed audience. "Never?" she said softly. "Did I say never?" I imagined that our screams were loud enough to shake the trees in the graveyard a half-mile away. Gwen laughed and the moon hid its face behind the clouds. Good grief, she was scary. There was never anything like this in Payson. Gwenny, as I called her, could really tell stories. She was better than the Let's Pretend radio show. I once asked Gwenny where she found those scary stories. "I found them in books," she replied. "I love to read, don't you?" I crossed my fingers behind my back. "Oh, yeah, I love to read. Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of reading," I answered. I was 13 and Nola was just a year older. She taught me to play jacks, a game I tolerated only to hear the sound of her laughter and gaze into her gorgeous brown eyes. And guess what else? She played the piano! What a coincidence! I had no idea that she had the same talent as Bonnie Ackerman. Picture the two of us sitting on the piano bench side by side, pounding out Leroy Anderson's Fiddle Faddle or Sleigh Ride. Well, you can imagine how stoked I got when I found a piano duet called Nola, like I had died and gone to heaven. Now, we all had dreams and I had mine. She was the girl I wanted to take to the 9th grade junior prom. But while dreams are important, they inspire and should be kept alive. Even then I knew it's how you make dreams real that counts. Tough. Well, we know where this story is going. Don actually never married. He never married or had kids in his whole entire life. So he grew up a bachelor. Based. I'm just kidding. I just had KFC for lunch. It's going to give me horrible gas. Well, you should have had Lee's Chicken. Lee's Chicken is way better. The Terror of Irving Junior High, hands down. The Terror of Irving... Fuck, I can't talk today. Sorry. Has anyone seen a teaser for Wish yet? I've seen the teaser. It's, I mean, it looks nice, but the animation is a little... I don't know. It's like they wanted to go for that Spider-Verse art style, but they couldn't fully commit. They just went for, like, a cheap cell shade instead. And it just, like... It looks unfinished. It looks kind of cheap, honestly. Like, it makes the film look kind of cheap. Almost like a direct-to-video film in some ways. Like, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, it looks fine. I'm sure it'll be a good movie with decent story and good songs. The song sounds nice. It just, I don't know. The animation just is not doing it for me, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Let's see. Tough Love. The Terror of Irving Junior High, hands down, was our English teacher, Mrs. Hosmer. Unsmiling and unlikable. She paced in front of the 8th grade class like the kind of army sergeant you'd only saw in movies. Her hair, pulled nightly back into a bun, was as gray as her clothes. Behind her glasses, her piercing eyes were always searching for mistakes. Now, I believe she used our fear as a way of getting our attention, but back then, I was just terrified of her. One morning, Mrs. Hosmer came to class with a collection of photos. Each was mounted on an 8x10 inch of cardboard. With a single word printed below it to describe what was going on in the photo. She passed out the cards, and when we all had one, she called on each of us to stand and give a definition for the word printed on our card. My photo showed a towering mountain covered with snow, while two small men, barely visible, were walking below it. The word printed on the word was dwarfed. "Donald," Hosmer commanded, "get up, it's your turn. Tell us the meaning of the word dwarfed." I paused, stuttered a bit, and finally came out with, "I know what it means, I just can't explain it." Her eyes turned hard as flint. "Is that so? Sit down, Donald. If you can't explain it, you certainly don't know what it means." The class laughed. In that one embarrassing moment, Hosmer gave me the key to learning. You either know a thing, or you don't. You can't fake it. You'll be found out. I resolved to get good at the photo game. I began reading more on my own. Still not a lot, but enough to find new words and look them up in the dictionary. That would explain the big words he's using. My God, I don't know half of these. Mainly probably because I don't read books, honestly. I was not going to let Mrs. Hosmer embarrass me again. At last, one day while I was giving a definition, I caught, from the corner of my eye, a smile, ever so faint, on Mrs. Hosmer's face. I came to love her tough, uncompromising approach to education. She gave me a valuable gift, a desire to learn about and use words. Mrs. Hosmer and I exchanged gifts. I pleased her by learning, she pleased me by teaching. In the next life, right after I visit Flash and Nilla Mac, I'll be off to find Mrs. Hosmer. Music appreciation. Remembering the name of the music teacher at Irving Junior High has been impossible. In 1954, the school records went up in smoke as the school burnt down. She was young and had red hair, freckles, and the energy of an athlete in a track and field event. That's all I remember, so I'll just call her Molly B. After the title character of the musical, I'll just call her Molly B. After the title character in the musical, the unsinkable Molly Brown. For those who don't know who that is, Molly Brown, she was on the Titanic, and that play is about her struggle to survive the Titanic. And I believe the musical actually starred her. She actually explained her story that way. Kind of funny, kind of fucked up, honestly, to put, honestly, it's kind of fucked to make a musical out of the Titanic, don't you think? Then again, we would get a movie about that, wouldn't we? Have I seen the trailer for Ahsoka show? I've seen it. It looks okay. I'm not super hyped about it, because we get so much Star Wars stuff nowadays, it's getting kind of annoying at this point, honestly, not gonna lie. I got to know the musical very well when my brother Fred and I were running the Bluth Brothers Theater in our 20s. It's about a woman who would not let any of life's worries get the best of her, including somehow surviving the sinking of the Titanic. Hers is a true story, by the way. Yeah, we know. I just went over that. Molly B's passion was the symphony orchestra, the coming together of musicians to create magnificent sounds beyond the ability of any soloist. She played records for our classes and even planned a field trip to the Salt Lake Tabernacle to hear the Utah Symphony Orchestra play Sergei Prokofiev's. It's a Russian name. Sergei Prokofiev's. I think it's Prokofiev's. Prokofiev's. I have no idea. Prokofiev's Peter in the Wolf. I sat in the corner audience enthralled as each instrument played, a different character in the narrative. The high-pitched flute was Sasha the bird, while a clarinet was Ivan the cat. Sonia the cat was the oboe, and Peter was the violin. The hunters were represented by the pounding of the kettle drums, and the wolf was an ominous dark theme played by the French horns. I had no idea that music could tell a story on its own, even apart from animation, or even radio or television shows. That every instrument had its own character and sound. What an epiphany! Holy cow, I told the boy in the mirror that night. What have I been missing? Music can be so much more than just a piano. The sounds of an orchestra are jubilant, exhilarating, like riding Flash through pastures, the wind blowing on his mane and against my face. He folded his arms and stared at me in silence. I stared back. What's wrong? I asked. I threw up my hands in disgust. Oh, I get it, but don't say it, I snapped. You want to talk about books again, right? Could you please just be glad I found something else I love for once? Music education. Donald Richardson was my music teacher in art school. He had his master's degree in music and was a tall man, slender and brimming with energy, with thinning brown hair, thick glasses, and a welcoming smile. His walk was aggressive, a slight lean forward as if he were always pushing against the wind. Whenever I saw him walk across the room, I thought of John Wayne. Excuse me, sorry. I was astounded by Mr. Richardson's vast knowledge of music history. He played us records of the great composers and drew the notes out of the blackboard so that we could see the composition's graphic form as we listened to the music. He told us about themes and motifs. He made music come alive, and he made it more real. For example, one day he announced, "Let's consider the 8 notes on the scale. Each has a personality characterized by a feeling that is unique. It isn't just the pitch of the note," he continued. "The sound of each note has a corresponding color that invites a mood. Music has the power to make you feel something, be it happy, sad, depressed, or angry. Each individual note in the scale has a character. Some of them harmonize with other members of the scale, while others want to be played alone." Mr. Richardson became one of my heroes, a rare individual who loved to teach from the heart. For him, teaching wasn't about a checklist. He was talking about something bigger than music, about art, and that made me think bigger about my dream to animate. Searching for a mentor. When I was young, I tended to think that adults knew what they were doing. For the longest time, I saw all my teachers as masters of their subjects, with me at their feet, ready to learn. Then, as a teenager, I met my physical education instructor, Mr. Malgaby. He was in charge of sex education at Irving Junior High and showed no enthusiasm for the subject whatsoever. The graphic illustrations of the human anatomy inspired no one, and his descriptions were monotonous and lacked passion. Most of the class fell asleep, except for one Andriana van Ostendorp, who took copious notes. I used my hour of class time to practice my drawing assignments for the art teachers. The art teachers. Nan Oman was the complete opposite of Mr. Malgaby. With her, everything came from the heart. She had rings on her fingers, all of them. Bells on her toes. I never really saw the bells on her toes, but I imagine she had them. And at least 3 necklaces around her neck at any one time. The necklaces, huge beads knocked against one another when she walked, so we could hear her coming down the hall long before she turned the knob and entered the classroom. She wore brightly colored skirts and buckskin boots, but her youthful summer threads did nothing to hide the gray in her hair. She wasn't very serious about actually teaching art. Nan was an entertainer, fun just to be around, and everyone loved her. She made us laugh. The other art teacher's name, a testament to art itself, was Miss Brown. That is until she married a man named Mr. Green. That made her Mrs. Brown Green. She had a mantra: art is interpretive. She would tell us, art is subjective, my darlings, and it should never be realistic. Right, I thought. Even I knew about classical paintings that hung in museums. Mrs. Brown Green was primarily a painter, one of great renown, or so she said. Her watercolor paintings were unique. There was no doubt about that. She not only used watercolors, but sand, seeds, and even a few feathers. Her paintings were fascinating, but resembled nothing I could relate to in the real world. The colors and shapes represented something that she alone had witnessed to in her wild imagination. Did I pick up any nuggets of wisdom from these 2 art teachers? The answer is yes. No 2 artists are alike in their approach. Each is different. Each draws, paints, and feels as he or she pleases. It's a liberating thought. But as these classes were required subjects, these were filled with students who weren't serious about art. And my own dream of learning to draw and animate skillfully enough to be hired by Disney seemed far out of reach. All I could do was keep drawing, which I did every day. Meanwhile, Dad wasn't cut out to be an insurance salesman. He loved the police work, and in 1952, when the city of Mapleton offered him a job as the town sheriff, he snapped it up instantly. We were moving again to Mapleton, a suburb of Springville, about 60 miles south of Salt Lake City. Our house would be 100 years old now. So I kept my fingers crossed,
hoping we wouldn't go back to the Saturday night bath routine. The bright yellow school bus passed in front of our house on Maple Street, picking up farm kids and taking them to Springville's junior high and the high school, two separate Victorian-style buildings separated by only 50 feet of glass and a sidewalk. I went to a school a bit like that. My high school had two different sections. Well, it wasn't like that when I went to high school. When I was growing up, there were multiple elementary schools in my town. I went to one called Saffel Street Elementary, but there were other ones. There was an Emma B. Ward Elementary, and there was a Turner Elementary. Emma B. Ward was actually connected to the main high school, which is still the high school now. These buildings were connected. There was a little bridge that connected them. Because sometimes the high schoolers would go to the elementary school to do certain classes. This was mainly girls learning either for babysitters for teen moms, or if they had a nursing class where they would practice with the kids sometimes, things like that. But as I got older, eventually the town built a new school way on near the highway that would become the new Emma B. Ward, and the remaining building just became a part of the high school. So when I got to high school, it wasn't Emma B. Ward anymore. It wasn't an elementary school anymore. It just became part of the high school. If anything, it became the freshman wing, where freshmen went to take classes there, separate from the rest of the classes. So, yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up. I just think it's interesting that Don and I had the same high school. That's kind of interesting. Or at least similar enough. Let's see, where was I already forgot. This junior high had an art elective, so I would be with students who chose to be in the class. However, my hopes for a good art education were dashed when the art teacher, Mr. Parson, walked into our classroom on the first day of class, wearing one of those silly Parson artist schmucks. What a total cliche. Springville is known as Art City. Paintings from all over the United States were on display in the art school's gallery, a focus of great civic pride. Receiving, unpacking, and hanging the paintings took up a lot of Mr. Parsons' days, leaving precious little time for his students, who spent hours all alone in the classroom in the gallery's basement, drawing and painting still life setups, first with charcoal and finally watercolors. Each class before Mr. Parson left to take care of the work. Each class before Mr. Parson left to take care of the work in the gallery, he gave us an assignment, something like this. You will be graded on your understanding of how a single light source illuminates an object, and also how it creates a reflected light on the same object. Have fun. He would start to exit again, but then invariably pause to add on to the assignment. Oh yes, I almost forgot. There's one more thing. I hope you know how privileged you are to have access to a nationally famous gallery that receives fine art entries from all over the world. Find a painting on display in the gallery and write a 300-word essay on why you think it's good art. My gosh. His art teacher married the villain from Northern North. Oh yeah, I guess she did, didn't she? After a few classes like this, I thought it would be to my advantage to tell Mr. Parson that I was interested in animation, not painting. But when I mentioned Walt Disney, his usual smug grin turned to a scowl. But that isn't really art, now is it, sweetie? His movies are cartoons, just doodles. We don't do animation here, and never will. With a wave of his hand, he dismissed me. I knew that animation is an art form, and no one could convince me otherwise. Right then and there, I decided he could never be my teacher. I would gush at his paintings to please him, and babble about light sources and reflected lights to get a good grade, but that was it. Lesson learned. Not every adult can be a mentor. I would keep looking, and I would choose carefully. Here's a little drawing of him with the man in the mirror, him leaning out a draw and such. It's a very nice picture, actually. Although for some reason I can never picture Don Bluth with hair. He's almost bald in every picture I've seen him in. All right, I think this will be the last chapter. We're 2 hours in. I'm gonna call it after this chapter. Chapter 6: Back to the Country. Our house in Mapleton sat on 7 acres of farmland, with chicken coops, a dilapidated barn with a hayloft, and a granny flat behind the main house that looked like it might collapse at any moment. When we first drove up to the place, I jokingly asked, "So, Dad, what times do the bats fly out?" "I believe that happens at 6, he snapped, frowning. On the dot at 6, out they came, through a small opening near the apex of the roof, at least 100 strong, their chirps sounding like the wrangling noise of merchants in a flea market. Bats are good, say Dad. They eat mosquitoes. That's a positive. My eyes scanned the yard looking for a green willow bush. None were in sight. Another positive. But I have to admit, despite its need for a remodel, the house had character. I knew nothing about the house's history, but from the look of it, at least 5 people could have passed over within its walls. And the house was certifiably haunted. Ghosts and bats do go together, you know. Guard duty. Sorry. I don't know why I read that as grand. It's guard duty. Did this art guy see Bambi? Apparently not. I doubt he did. Our new house was so old and dilapidated that the inside rooms needed new walls, and in places, new floorboards. As soon as we moved to town, the remodeling began. Our family stayed in a hotel temporarily. Everyone, that is, except for me and Bob. At 16, Bob was ready for some real responsibility, or so Dad proclaimed, and he assigned Bob to guard the place at night and keep it safe from vandals till the lights and waters could be turned on, and it was habitable. Almost as an afterthought, Dad assigned me into guard duty too. Bob, my fearless brother, vowed to protect us with his baseball bat. 13-year-old me, on the other hand, was scared to death. During our first night on guard duty, we snuggled down into our sleeping bags. Bob checked out quickly, snoring lightly. But I laid awake, my eyes darting about, nervous about a possible intruder. Just past midnight, I heard a scraping sound. I sensed the presence of someone in the room, someone watching me. I couldn't see anything until another scraping sound pulled my eyes to the corner of the room. That's when I saw the shadowy figure of a man. He was crouched down not 10 feet away, glaring at me. "Bob!" I screamed, hitting him on the shoulder. "Wake up!" Bob bolted to his feet, grabbed his bat, and began swinging. "There he is!" I yelled. "In the corner!" With a crash, his bat connected with the head of the intruder. With a crash, his bat connected with the head of the intruder. Little black 2-inch drywall nails went flying everywhere, bouncing off the ceiling and the walls. Bob dropped his bat. "You, little brother, are an idiot," he shouted. "There's no one here but us. I just smashed a bag of nails." "I thought it was a ghost," I said, gasping for a breath. "A bag of nails sitting on a barrel is not a man nor a ghost. Don't move." There are nails scattered all over the floor now, and we're both barefooted. "Here," he said, handing me the bat. "I'm going back to sleep. You kill the next one." In spite of the serious tone of his voice, I couldn't help myself. I snickered, then laughed out loud. Bob tried to be serious, but he failed. He joined me. At last, after a long few weeks, his house was ready for us to move in. It was small, but adequate. The yard, on the other hand, was beautiful. A great length of manicured lawn with apple and peach trees everywhere. The old house lay on the foothills, beyond which towered the magnificent snow-capped Rocky Mountains. But who cares about that? I gave the blue ribbon prize to the large porcelain bathtub with hot and cold running water. Life was good. But when baby Brad joined us, that made 7 kids. And the main house was no longer big enough for all of us. A king-size bed was set up in a granny flat behind the main house for Bob and me. The mattress from Goodwill was shaped like a miniature version of the Grand Canyon, all bumpy and sunken in the middle. The basement of the granny... Hang on. Okay. Oh, I forgot to show I'm stupid. I forgot to show this picture he drew of the intruder. It's actually a pretty cool picture. It's like a goblin of some kind. It kind of looks like something from the Dragon's Lair game, actually, when you see it. It kind of looks like the final form of that wizard in Dragon's Lair 2. Yeah, looks kind of good. It's really good art. The basement of the granny flat used to flood, and that 1 foot of water became the spawning ground for hundreds of mosquitoes. All of this was annoying, but nothing compared to the misery of the cold winter nights in that dumpy little flat. "I know," said Bob one day, "where there is an old coal fuel heater, it could see it. I know where there is an old coal fuel heater. It could see us nicely through the winter. Will you help me hook it up?" I was more than enthusiastic about the idea, and so the deed was done. Dad's only advice was, "Don't burn the little house down." Those 6 little words of warning turned out to be a curse. We stoked up the heater with coal and checked into bed, anticipating a warm, comfortable night of sleep. At 2 o'clock in the morning, however, I awoke, drenched in sweat. The heater was glowing red, top to bottom, and the wooden roof through which the heater's vent pipe was mounted was sparkling with small yellow flames. Bob woke up with a volley of swear words. While I gave a silent call of gratitude to Oscar, I knew it was him who woke me up. Without guardian angels, I don't think any of us would have survived. The smoke and Bob's swearing got everyone out of their beds in a state of panic. We all gathered outside the house in our robes until the flames went out, with a little help from Dad and the garden hose. Needless to say, the stove was never lit again. At last, my first lesson in animation. Despite Mr. Parsons' opinions, I continue to pore through books about animation, learning how a character's smooth action is painstakingly created frame by frame. I borrowed my dad's Super 8 camera to film a bird in flight, and then watched and rewatched the film to try and draw a bird flying. But no matter how carefully I drew each beat of its wings, my efforts weren't good enough. When I flipped through the drawings, the movement of my bird didn't look like what I saw in theaters. It looked homespun, not magical. Mapleton was only 8 miles from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. One day, the Deseret News published a piece of a man named Wetzel Orson Judge Whittaker. An animator who had actually worked at Walt Disney Snow White. Sorry, let me read that whole thing again. One day, the Deseret News published a piece on a man by the name of Wetzel Orson Judge Whittaker, an animator who had actually worked on Walt Disney Snow White, as well as one of my new favorite films, Peter Pan. He was moving to Provo to join a faculty as head of the university's motion picture department. That he was also part of the LDS community didn't amaze me as much as this. What on earth was a man who had worked with my hero Walt Disney doing in a place like Provo, Utah? I must go meet this man, I said to the mirror. Perhaps he can show me how to animate. I am encouraged by the fact that you read about him in the newspaper, the boy in the mirror said. I'm delighted you can read. Go find him and come back and report. Somewhere inside of me, I had enough fire and brimstone to pick up the phone and call Brigham Young University's film department and make an appointment to see Judge Whittaker. Once at the film department studio, I was expecting to meet someone like Roy Rogers or Douglas Fairbanks Jr., a swashbuckling, adventurous hero, cavalier, and wildly romantic. Mr. Whittaker was none of that. He was a short, middle-aged man with a big head, thick white hair, a broad smile, and steel-grayed eyes. To me, he looked like a wolf. I'm in the 9th grade, I began. I'm only 15, but I want to work for Walt Disney when I get out of school. His smile broadened. Well, can you draw? He asked. I'm getting better at it. I practice all the time, but animation is a mystery to me. Would you explain how you make the drawings come to life? Follow me, he said. Animation is really very simple. My heart was pounding as we entered his office. At last, I thought to myself. He sat down. He sat down at the desk, his flat top tilted at a 45-degree angle. This is an animation desk. It's one of the tools of our trade, he began. A round aluminum disc was mounted on the top of the desk. In the disc was an inlaid window made of opaque white glass. Judge flipped a switch of the desk, and a light went on under the desk. He stuck his index finger into a hole into the top of the desk and rotated the disc counterclockwise. By turning the disc, he said, I can change my point of view. It's sometimes easier to create a drawing when I see it from a different angle. He pointed to a row of pegs mounted on the desk, just below the glass. See these 3 little pegs mounted on the desk? Watch. He held up a sheet of paper with 3 holes and slipped it over the pegs. This is animation paper. Each drawing has to be on the pegs for proper registration. Now pay attention. This is my magic pencil. And he swiftly drew a character from Peter Pan, one of the Lost Boys. He slipped a second piece of paper onto the pegs, and he drew the same character again, most of his lines matching the previous drawings. However, this time he drew it in a slightly different position, as if the character was preparing to take a step. With a quick movement of his fingers, Judge flipped the 2 pages alternately, then paused and looked up. I could see a grin starting deep within me. That's how movement is created, I said. That's how movement is created, I said, awestruck. It was miraculous. One drawing at a time. For every second you see on the big movie screen, an animator will have to make 24 drawings. Do you think you could do that? The way he asked that question made me feel that he cared very much about how I would answer. I absolutely will do that, I answered. He added, Would you like to have a tour of our facility here? Would I ever? BYU had built a small soundstage for Judge Whittaker, laying the groundwork for his production of educational films for the LDS community. There was one room in particular that caught my attention. It housed what Judge Whittaker called a 16mm Acme animation stand. It had a camera specifically designed to shoot the animator's 24 drawings, putting them on film to get them ready for the projector. Wow, I said. That looks really expensive. $15,000, but worth every penny. Wait till you see the Disney cameras. They're bigger and with more gadgets. They're absolutely mind-boggling. It was getting time to leave, but I couldn't help but ask, I had just one more question, Mr. Whittaker. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but I am curious. Yes, what is it? The Disney studio must be the most wonderful place in the world, right? Why did you leave? Judge smiled. I came to a crossroads in my life, he began. Crossroads are always difficult. Nothing is forever, they say, except for change. I loved being an animator, but there was something inside of me pulling me here. If you don't follow your heart, then why are we living? Walt made a movie called So Dear to My Heart. Have you seen it? It's one of my favorites. There's a quote at the beginning of the film that pretty much sums it up. It goes like this. The greatest treasure a man can acquire, is the wisdom that comes through living. I finished it with him. Think about that quote when you encounter your own crossroads. Once I get to the Disney studios, I will never leave. Never, I vowed. Perhaps, he said quietly. We'll see. His answer puzzled me, but Judge glanced at his watch and stood up. That was my cue to leave. I thanked him for his insights in animation and headed for the door. But in my head, I could already hear the voice of the boy in the mirror saying, That's it? A peek at the disc, some pegs and paper? That's all you got? I turned around. Mr. Whittaker, my voice cracked and I cleared my throat. If you've got some time to spare, I would like to come back and see you again. Maybe show you my work? Would that be possible? I asked. He handed me his business card. Just call me, he said, grinning. That number is for your eyes only. If Disney was my new Santa Claus, then Judge Whittaker was one of his elves. However, the elf would have to wait for the call. The 9th grade junior prom was staring me in the face. I had a dream to make real. There were plenty of girls in Springville Junior High who I could have asked to the junior prom. But there was one 60 miles away who topped them all, a girl that I had never dated. She was the one who sat on the piano bench next to me and played piano duets. She made my 2.5-year stay in Salt Lake City a delight. We screamed together while listening to her sister Gwenny spook us with their creepy ghost stories. Nola was not merely a date of choice. She was my choice for a perfect date and a friend. Being a little superstitious, I found something in her name that bothered me. The first 2 letters of her name were N-O. What if she already had a date to her own prom? What if she were invited to somebody's birthday? What if she already had a steady boo? What if she said no? The call was long distance. Dad footed the bill. He knew this mystery date would create a stir among my classmates at school. He loved the possibilities. He was nearby when it dialed. Ring, ring, ring. Ring, ring, ring. I slapped a hand over the mouthpiece on my phone. I slapped a hand over the mouthpiece of the phone. No one's home, I whispered. Don't hang up, Dad said from when he was listening. Patience. Gary here, I heard. Hey, Daddy-O, how are you doing? He said Daddy-O. It was the 50s, wasn't it? I began. Gary was Nola's younger brother. Basketball was his thing. He was built like a basketball player, tall and skinny, with large hands and feet. And when he spoke, there was a hint of basketball in the words he chose. "Hey Don, what's the game plan? Shoot, man." "Can you keep a secret?" I asked. "Of course, that's a slam dunk." By that which he meant cross my heart. "Is Nola there?" "Nola's out back right now." He sounded a little impatient. "She's busy. What do you want? Shoot, kiddo." "I'll tell you, but not a word. It's a secret, do you understand? It's your ball. I'm going to ask your sister to be my date for the junior prom." "That's great. Chalk one up for you." Wow, he really loved the basketball dialogue, didn't he? With a clunk, Gary set down the phone and yelled, "Hey sis, it's Don. He wants to take you to the junior prom." Suddenly Nola picked up. Yes, the answer is yes. 1,000 times yes. I can meet your friends, we can dance and tell stories, and make all the girls very jealous. What's the theme?" In a happy dance I replied, "Moonlight Serenade, Glenn Miller, and it's formal." "I have the perfect dress," Nola said excitedly. "Now, don't spend all your money on a long-distance call. Write me a letter with all the details." She hung up the phone, and I stood there speechless. She said yes. Dad assured me, "Don't worry about a thing. I'll drive you to Salt Lake to pick her up the night of the prom." Apparently Mom was listening too, because she jumped in. "I know the perfect place to rent a tuxedo, and you'll need a corsage." I was still holding the receiver in my hand. She said yes. Okay, fine, sorry, I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but it's really good. Oh, it is good. It's really interesting. I'm invested. I really like this. Speaking of Peter Pan, do you think Peter Pan and Wendy is terrible? I haven't watched it yet. It just came out this morning. I'm actually going to watch it. Probably after this, to be honest with you. I might make a video about it because I do want to look into the Disney remakes, so it might actually end up being my next video because my next video is a long one. Like, I'm still working on the script. It's going to be a long video, like a really long one. I picture it might be an hour long, maybe even longer, to be honest with you. All right, let's get back into it. Moonlight Serenade. The jocks on the football team couldn't care less about who I took to my prom. I was not their competition. Ah, but the ladies. They took my stonewalling them as a personal affront. "Springville girls aren't good enough, is that it? Who is this mysterious girl? Does she have a name?" These were the popular girls, the ones who set their sights on the muscles, the captains and quarterbacks. If I'd asked those girls to the prom, they would have said no. They just took it as an insult that I went around them. That's the truth of it. That night, the gymnasium was festooned with twisted crepe paper, red and blue, ceiling to floor, the school colors of the Springville Red Devils. Hanging in the center of the gym, surrounded by hundreds of red and blue balloons, was a mirrored ball, throwing shards of colored lights everywhere, from the walls to everyone's upturned face. Enchantment appeared so rarely in each of our lives, but when it does, wow. For me, this night was definitely one of those moments. It was my night of nights. Nola was an excellent dancer, and she looked stunning. She was like a mysterious princess who had arrived from another kingdom. There were small whispers going around the room. The questions on everyone's lip is, who is that girl, and what is she doing here with Don, of all people? And while I tried to ignore everyone, Nola was having the time of her life. She was the one asking questions on those she met, giving them nothing in return but about her own identity. She was enthralling, beautiful, and kind. We danced together most of the evening. One brave soul tapped my shoulder, so I stepped aside and let him dance with her. He whirled Nola around the floor, and when the music stops, she came back and squeezed my hand and said, "I'm having a wonderful time. I'm so glad you asked me. I'll remember this night forever." I'm sure I blushed, but the lights were too dim for anyone to notice. Later at a friend's house, there were strawberries, waffles, ice creams, and a kiss. It was a night to remember, and so intoxicating. How nice it is to be young and out on a date. On the drive back to Salt Lake City, Nola and I sat in the back seat, holding hands and talking. I walked her to her front door. She kissed me goodnight, and though I didn't know right then there, my life had changed. I became somebody after the 9th grade junior prom. It was as if some of Nola's charm had rubbed off on me. I bet. I'm just kidding. In the days that followed, students smiled as they passed and said hello. I was invited to be on the yearbook staff. I could draw cartoons. But I knew that wasn't the reason they pulled me in. A beautiful, mysterious princess from a faraway land was behind my newfound popularity. My family moved away from Mapleton a few years later. Nola and I still wrote to each other for a while, but the letters would eventually stop. We had both moved on. Nola had appeared in my life at the perfect time. Now, that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad, though, isn't it? He had actually met his true love. Man, that's kind of sad, isn't it? Don had actually met his true love in Nola, but they were just too far apart. They couldn't keep it together. That sucks. I had a long-distance relationship once with a girl named Ashley. She lived in Virginia. She was really sweet. I think to this day she was still the best girl I ever dated. She was absolutely breathtaking. But kind of like with Dawn, the distance is what killed us, you know? I didn't have a job to go get money to go see her and stuff. And on top of that, she had ambitions that weren't aligning with mine. She wanted to buy a farm and have a bunch of kids and stuff. I wanted to go see the world and not settle down. Like, in the end, our life goals were too different, and the distance was killing us, so we broke it off. She was still a really cool girl, though. She was really wonderful. Last I heard of her, she did get married, and she has a kid now, which is, I'm really happy to hear about that. You don't need to tell me about the Murder Joe man twice, man, okay? Just, I saw the comments. I'm reading them. But, yeah, I actually really dig the book. Mainly, not because Don's an interesting person, although he is, but because I'm actually relating with him. Like, I relate to this so much. Like, I was through the same experience. I met a girl. We had a long-distance thing, but it didn't work out, sadly. Yeah. That's how it goes. Sorry y'all broke it off. It's okay. It's fine. It's okay. I do miss her, I guess, but this was years ago. I moved on. It's all good now. Meanwhile, my brother Bob was finally choosing a sweetheart. Back when we lived on the farm outside of Payson, Utah, as soon as we had turned 15, the winds had shifted to the east. Utah, as soon as we had turned 15, the winds had shifted to the east. A girl received a rose, and Bob was the guy who picked it. At first, there were only 2 girlfriends, but then 5, then 10. He monopolized the family bathroom and reeked of Old Spice. He and I named each of the 24 cows we had at the time on our farm after his many girlfriends. I was in charge of the ones who were his least favorites. Charlotte was the Jersey, shy and petite. Amy, Vivian, and Janine were the Holsteins, grand females with large udders. Those 3 knew how to put foam on the milk bucket. I simply sang and they mooed and gave up the milk. Bob and Dad managed the rest of the ladies. Years later, while we were living in Salt Lake City, the entire family was relieved and excited to meet the girl that Bob wanted to marry. The one that he called is Peaches and Cream. The introduction of my future sister-in-law gave me a chuckle. Your name is Janine? I asked when I met her for the first time. Bob gave me an elbow to the ribs. He knew what I was thinking. Janine was one of the cows that I used to milk morning and night. How nice to finally put a face to that name, I began. I feel like I've known you forever. Bob's finger poked me painfully in the ribs. I know what you're thinking. Not a peep out of you, or I'll break your pencils, and then your neck. Bob and Janine married in an LDS church in Gene's hometown, Spring Lake, Utah. I saw my brother Bob in a new light, all cleaned up, wearing a tux, shine shoes, and a crooked smile. What a handsome devil, I thought to myself. Why had I not seen this side of him before? As I sat there staring at him and his bride, it occurred to me that each of them was more beautiful together than they could ever be apart. They were in love, and that was the magic. And here's a drawing of his brother Bob with his wife, Janine. It's a very nice picture, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When apples grow on the lilac tree. Fred and I were slated to provide a musical number at Bob and Janine's wedding reception. He would sing, and I would accompany him on the piano. The song was a sentimental little ditty, horribly sappy and extremely embarrassing to perform. But Mom insisted, and there was no getting out of it. It had to be done. It started with a little boy and a little girl in an ecstasy of bliss, said the little boy to the little girl. Pray give me just one kiss. Then the little girl refuses him, saying she will only kiss him when apples grow on the lilac tree. The little boy was crushed. She's the only one for him. And the little girl is so remorseful that she goes ahead and ties apples to the lilac tree. Oh, please, give me a break. It's awful. I have tried for years to erase those lyrics of tying apples on the lilac tree from my memory banks of my brain, but with no success. The more I push them away, the stronger they come back, like persistent weeds in a garden. That experience did teach me something valuable. Some songs just don't work. To this day, I'm very careful about when selecting the music for a movie. Chapter 7, California, Here I Come. Hang on, let me see how long this chapter is. Okay, we'll finish this last chapter. This is the story. I think this is the chapter where he goes to Disney. So we'll finish. This will be the last chapter for sure. I know I said that for the last 3 chapters, but I'm in it. I'm invested. Damn it. Chapter 7, California, Here I Am. In the summer of 1954, life was good. I was 17. I had just finished the 11th grade and had tons of friends. Then, like a bolt of lightning, Dad landed a job with McDonnell Douglas Aircraft in Santa Monica, California. Again, the family would move, but first we needed money to do it. Dad and I would go to California to start. Dad's brother, my Uncle Lamar, and his wife Evelyn offered to let us stay at their house in Santa Monica until Dad could find a place on his own. I would finish high school in California, which meant, as I told the boy in the mirror, I was one step closer to realizing my dream. Hellos and goodbyes. The night before leaving Mapleton for California, I went to a movie with my 2 best friends, Boyd Hales and Lynn Anderson. Elephant Walk was the only flick playing in town. After the show, we said our awkward goodbyes and then walked off. I never saw them again. The movie was about a beautiful estate built on a pathway called an elephant walk. When the elephant herd came tromping through, it destroyed everything. It was like a metaphor for my life back then. I would put down roots wherever my family moved to a town, only to have to pull them up again and start all over when we moved somewhere else. It made friendships temporary and saying goodbye to close friends very painful. I feel this now in the movie industry. I draw the characters, get to love them, and then have to leave them and go on to another project. Creation and destruction. Hello and goodbye. Drawing is just like moving. Let's see. No one sees the wizard. Living with Uncle Lamar and his family was mind-expanding. I got to know my cousins far too well. Stephen, Karen, Judy, and the little princess Deborah who liked to argue. Building sandcastles together on the beach seemed friendly enough, but the contention in little Uncle Lamar's house was getting out of hand. Aunt Evelyn threatened to thrash the lot of us with her spank turner unless we behaved. Spank what? I asked. She was talking about the kitchen spatula, the one that she used to turn pancakes. It was often the preferred tool for disciplining her children. Dan finally found a place we could call our own, a Spanish-style house on 30th Street. The 2 of us moved in and sent for the family. My mom and siblings soon left the Mapleton house and its residence baths and joined us in Santa Monica. In this land of sunshine, I went to work inside as a box boy at the Vaughn's Market. The good part about the job was the bus ride to and from Vaughn's from our house. That was my think and draw time. I was filled with pride as I was helping my family to make the move to California. It was another coming-of-age moment. But guess what? The boy in the mirror was finally growing muscles. California people are different from the Utah breed. They're not so stressed out, and they're more generous with their smiles. Maybe it's the ocean air? For sure, no one smelled like cow manure. The nearest neighbor's house was only 20 feet away. Our church's congregation could fill a small Utah town. There were people everywhere, packed together like sardines and cars. Holy cow, so many cars! They were not just driving on the surface streets. There were freeways, broad cement thoroughfares built like bridges high above the housetops with no stoplights to slow you down. California lifestyle was a race, a fast-moving thing. It was exciting, the land of opportunity and movie stars, and one more thing, I was now closer to Disney Studios. Aunt Evelyn told me the studio gave guided tours for the public. She had a friend who knew a friend who had an aunt who worked there, and she was willing to set up a tour for the studio. On the appointed day, Aunt Evelyn and I got into her car and she unfolded a map. Uh-oh, I said. Do you know where we're going? Of course, it can't be that hard, darling. It's right here on the map. She didn't say darling, I added that for fun. The appointment was for 3 o'clock. At 3:30, we were still driving up and down Vineland Boulevard, pulling into service stations, asking for directions. Finally, at 4 o'clock, we were hopelessly bogged down in traffic at Riverside Dale. Aunt Evelyn made a call on the phone from a phone booth, telling her contact why we would be late. She got back in the car, looking concerned. Your tour guide has already gone home, my dear. We'll find another time, not to worry. I wasn't worried one bit. I knew my predestined arrival into Disney lot was a sure thing. The boy in the mirror told me so. He just didn't tell me it would be another 2 years. Samoe. Oh, Samoe, mighty Samoe, queen of the setting sun. For you we toil, for you our banners fly. We win for you when day is done. I have to pee. Go pee. You ain't gotta tell me that. Damn. September had arrived, and with it my senior year at Santa Monica High School, or Samoe, the queen of the setting sun. The entrance to the sprawling high school building faced the west, the beach, and the salty brine of the Pacific Ocean. Every morning at 8 came the deafening boom of the ceremonial cannon, welcoming the 2,000 students to the campus. At the sound of it, everyone froze in their tracks, placed their hands over the hearts, and watched as the U.S. flag went up the pole, accompanied by a solo trumpet playing reveille. Nothing like that had ever happened in Mapleton. Our call to class in Utah was a simple ring of a tired old school bell. California is an entertainment capital of the world, and Californians love a good show. Doesn't it just give you goosebumps knowing that there's a place in the world where the students begin their academy saluting Old Glory? Holy cow, that's the bee's knees. Betty Hutton's Biscuit. My friends on campus turned out to be the same kids I met at our church in Santa Monica, the Mormon crowd. We were the brown baggers and lunched on the same spot of lawn every day. We were a noisy group, filled to the brim with gossip and a fair amount of mischief. I didn't miss the farm one bit. An old song that I once heard in the movie expressed my feelings exactly. How are you going to keep them down the farm once they've seen Paris? The surprises just kept coming and coming. Take, for example, the scavenger hunt. The LDS kids met every Tuesday night at a church for faith-promoting activities, and that was the activity scheduled for the evening. A scavenger hunt, I said. What is that? Everyone laughed. One girl asked, "You're a senior in high school and you've never been on a scavenger hunt?" "I'm from Utah," I explained sheepishly. "So am I," said one of the kids. "We do scavenger hunts in Salt Lake." "Well, I'm from West Mountain," I confessed. "How does it work?" "We have a list of items we have to collect," said Lynn Barlow, our team captain. I got the feeling he's done lots of these scavenger hunts and won them too. If our team gets back here first with all the items on the list, we win a prize. All the teams travel in their cars. They can go anywhere in the city. You're on the team. First thing on the list is an old dog collar. Come on, we're wasting time. There's a drawing here of a dance. I don't think that's supposed to be Don and Nola. It could be, but it's in the wrong section. It could be something else entirely. I have no idea. But still, very nice. Let's see. The five of us climbed into Lynn's car and examined the list. A red rubber hot bottle water was on the list just below the dog collar. Further down I read, "Something from a movie star." "That's impossible," I said. "We don't know any movie stars." "I do," said Lynn. "I do deliveries to the stars every day up at Beverly Hills. Let's try Betty Hutton. I know where she lives. It's on Laurel Canyon." Filed away in my mind are the memories of movies I had seen in Payson. One of them was called Annie Get Your Gun, starring Betty Hutton and Howard Keel. Great story, great production, and great memories. I was stunned just at the thought of parking a car in front of her house. Soon enough, Lynn's car screeched to a halt before an ivy-covered gate. "Stay put, guys. I'll see if she's home," he said and disappeared behind the gate. This is not like my life in Mapleton. Not one bit, I thought as I crossed my fingers on Lynn's behalf. The car door jerked open, and he jumped in behind the wheel, holding 2 baking powder biscuits. "We're in luck," he whispered, throwing the 2 biscuits into the back seat. "Miss Hudson was baking. We're going to win this contest." And he was right. We won 5 tickets to a movie. I asked if I could please have one of those biscuits. I told the Betty Hutton story to the boy in the mirror, and his reaction was hurtful. "Did you meet Miss Hutton?" he asked cuttingly. "No, you did not. You met her baking powder biscuit." He laughed and walked away. "Starstruck!" "I'm not starstruck. I'm enthusiastic," I responded. I knew he was right, though, but I carried Betty Hudson's biscuits in my trouser pocket for nearly 2 weeks until it turned to crumbs. Rebel without a cause. One thing I loved about living in California was how unpredictable it was. Whenever the school bell rang in Samari, I could signal more than the changing of classes. A very long, extended bell meant the school was on fire, and you could get out as quickly as possible, or just a drill with no fire. A short bell meant it was time to get up from whatever you were doing and go to your next class. The bell I just heard was 3 short rings. Uh-oh, I thought. What's up now? As I passed through the grand entrance of the school to the great outdoors, I saw movie cameras everywhere and heard directors with megaphones screaming, "Don't stop! Keep walking!" at the parade of students exiting the building. Beyond the commotion in the eyes of the camera, a group of us gathered to figure out what was happening. "They're filming a movie," said one student. "What movie?" asked another. "Something called Rebel Without a Cause," said a third. "It stars Natalie Wood and James Dean." "Who's James Dean?" I asked, and nobody answered. No one knew. I noticed that the sign over the main entrance of the school now read Dawson High School. That sign sure hadn't been there when the flag went up this morning. Who renamed the school? I started grinning. My first Hollywood movie set, and I was in the movie. I'll say it again, unpredictable. All right, so that's chapter 8. So we're not exactly at Disney yet, but I am going to call it there because I am getting kind of bored. I am getting kind of hungry, and I do want to get to work on stuff, other stuff. That's it's 2:30 now. I've been waiting for 2.5 hours. Who'd have thought reading was this interesting? But so yeah, overall, to briefly sum it up, we explored Don being born. We saw his life on a farm. We saw him move around Utah a bit. We learned how his father was pretty strict with him and such. He would sell eggs to go and move on. He was born in Texas, but he moved to Utah. He did a bunch of cool stuff like that. He met a woman by the name of Nola, who I'm pretty sure was his true love, but sadly it didn't work out. He had his siblings he worked with. There was some cool stuff. Overall, it's definitely interesting. And now he's in California, and now he's getting really close to accomplishing his dream of becoming an animator. It's definitely interesting for sure. Still, it kind of breaks my heart with the whole Nola thing, because that's too relatable to me. Oh man, but yeah, I'm calling it there. I'm done. I'm definitely going to come back and read more of this. Like, you can bet on that. I am definitely going to read more of this. I don't see a reason not to. It's really good. It's really good. Like I said, this is going to be multiple streams. I can already tell you that much. Yeah, so we're at chapter 8 now. So we're now at chapter 8. Look for a silver lining. So yeah, this will probably be where he gets it. So yeah, I think we're getting to that point. Yeah, next chapter is where he actually enters Disney. So we'll consider this the pre-Disney period, the pre-Disney era of Don Bluth's life. We'll call it there though, but I'm done. I'm gonna go get something to eat, and then I'm gonna watch the new Peter Pan movie on Disney Plus, and then get to work on making a video and gets to work on video making it, talking about it. So. Thanks to everybody who sat down and watched and listened to me read. I'll be sure to come back and do another live stream, maybe in a few days, maybe like next week, to try and read the book some more. So with that being said, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. So, guys, rock on.